Chapter 367. There were countless large sects in the Jianghu, among which the 9 major families were the easiest to change. Sects relied on the inheritance of cultivation methods. Even if the people of the sect died, as long as someone obtained the cultivation method and was willing to rebuild the sect, the entire sect would not be destroyed. Compared to sects, families relied on bloodlines to pass down their inheritance. This kind of thing naturally had a certain disadvantage, and there were too many limitations. Therefore, the 9 major families in the Jianghu were now thinking of ways such as marriage alliances or changing the system to make themselves more powerful. At the same time, they would also make fewer mistakes. As one of the top 3 among the 9 major families, the Xiahou clan was already powerful enough. Therefore, what the Xiahou clan sought now was stability, which could be seen from the system of the Xiahou clan. In the Xiahou clan, except for the patriarch who had been in seclusion for a long time, even the patriarch could not make a decision. Although Xiahou Zhen was the patriarch, there were more than 10 elders above him. These elders might not be as powerful as Xiahou Zhen, but they were extremely experienced people in the Jianghu. These people did not have actual power, but they could stop what Xiahou Zhen wanted to do. The purpose was to keep Xiahou Zhen in check and balance as the patriarch, preventing him from doing things his own way and bringing the Xiahou clan into the abyss. Therefore, in the Xiahou clan, if Xiahou Zhen wanted to make some changes, he had to consider all aspects and convince all the elders. It could be said that being the patriarch of the Xiahou clan was not an ordinary kind of tiring. Although the rules of the Xiahou clan could prevent the patriarch from making any overly drastic decisions and bringing the Xiahou clan into the abyss, it also slowed down the development of the Xiahou clan and made the system a little overstaffed. At this time, more than 10 elders were sitting in the meeting hall of the Xiahou clan. They were all old, but their strength was not weak. Among these elders, the weakest had the cultivation of the oneness of heaven and man realm in the past, and the stronger ones were even martial Dao masters in the past. However, they were too old and had reached the limit of their lifespans. Even martial Dao masters did not have the chance to fight, so they gave up their power and cultivated in the clan in peace. Xiahou Zhen walked into the hall and sat on the main seat. He looked around and said indifferently, "Elders, why have you summoned me here?" The oldest among them, an old man with white hair and beard who could barely keep his eyes open, said slowly, "I heard that you're going to use the power of the Xiahou family to suppress the Guanzhong torture room?" The Xiahou clan was only so big. Before they came, Xiahou Zhen had already guessed what they wanted to do. Xiahou Zhen couldn't help but snort coldly, "So what? Great Elder, do you have any objections?" The Great Elder was of the same generation as the patriarch of the Xiahou clan. He was also a martial Dao master in the past, but the patriarch of the Xiahou clan in that generation was even more amazing and had been suppressing the Great Elder. As a result, the Great Elder never had a chance to stand out in the Xiahou clan, even when his lifespan was coming to an end. However, although the Great Elder was not good enough, he wanted to train his descendants to take the position of the patriarch. Unfortunately, none of his descendants were useful. After a few decades, he finally produced a talented descendant, but he happened to be of the same generation as Xiahou Zhen. He was directly suppressed by Xiahou Zhen and failed to compete for the position of the patriarch. Therefore, over the years, the Great Elder was the one who opposed Xiahou Zhen the most. Sometimes, Xiahou Zhen even wished that the old thing could die as soon as possible. His life was a waste of resources, and he could not bring any benefits to the Xiahou clan. The Great Elder said slowly, "Patriarch, you have to know that you are the patriarch of the entire Xiahou clan. Every move you make represents the overall interests of the Xiahou clan. I've heard about the matter. Xiahou Wujiang was too spoiled by you. He suffered losses in the Jianghu, but he didn't learn anything. It's only right that he lost to others. When I roamed the Jianghu in the past, I was defeated again and again, but I didn't go back to the clan to ask for reinforcements. Also, although someone died this time, it wasn't a member of the Xiahou clan. It was just a right-hand man. What are you so excited about? You're even going to use the power of the Xiahou clan to suppress the Guanzhong torture room. Is there any benefit in doing so?" Xiahou Zhen said coldly, "No benefit? Old 7 is a member of the Xiahou clan. If the Xiahou clan doesn't even fart after he died, wouldn't we be a laughing stock if the news got out?" The Great Elder still said slowly, "Patriarch, to put it bluntly, that dead right-hand man was just a dog raised by the Xiahou clan. If he let the dog bite someone and the dog was killed, we could just raise another one. Why did we have to sacrifice him?" Xiahou Zhen slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Old 7 is my brother." The Great Elder put away his slow demeanor and stared at Xiahou Zhen. He said coldly, "Patriarch, don't forget what your surname is. He's just an outsider. The one who has the blood of the Xiahou clan in his veins is your clansman. Because of this matter, I feel that I've suffered a great loss even if I sacrifice the life of a collateral disciple of the Xiahou clan, not to mention that the Guanzhong torture room itself is not to be trifled with. You're the patriarch, so you naturally have to consider the interests of the Xiahou clan. If you're not considerate enough, then it's up to us old fogies to think for you. As long as we're here, you can't use any of your power. The lives of the Xiahou clan's cultivators are very precious and cannot be wasted on something so insignificant. The other elders echoed the great elder's words. Almost 90% of the people present would stand on the great elder's side, while the remaining 10% would remain neutral. These people weren't purposely making things difficult for Xiahou Zhen. They were merely acting out of interest. Although elders like them no longer held any real power, their children and descendants were still in the Xiahou clan. They naturally had to think about their children and descendants. Therefore, if Xiahou Zhen wanted to do anything, he would have to give their descendants a certain amount of benefit. Once they realized that Xiahou Zhen had too much power in his hands and wanted to stir up trouble, they would have to suppress Xiahou Zhen. Looking at these old fogies in front of him, Xiahou Zhen gnashed his teeth in hatred. He, this patriarch, was incomparably domineering in the eyes of other martial artists, but he himself only felt aggrieved, abnormally aggrieved. Xiahou Zhen stood up fiercely and said in a cold voice, "Fine, fine, fine. You all consider for the sake of the Xiahou clan's interests. But today I'm only taking revenge for a personal grudge. I won't use the Xiahou clan's power. In a while I'll personally go and find Guan Xiu to ask for the person." Finished talking, Xiahou Zhen flicked his sleeves and left. One of the elders moved in front of the great elder and asked rather worriedly, "Great elder, we refuted patriarch like that today. Nothing will happen, right?" The great elder said coolly, "What can happen? Xiahou Zhen isn't an idiot either. He won't go and fight to the death with Guan Xiu because of an outsider. He's currently in a fit of rage. At most he'll just go to the Guanzhong torture room to vent his anger. Nothing will happen. This period of time, things have been going a little too smoothly for him. It's hard to avoid being inflated. We're also trying to calm him down and let him calm down. What's the role of us, these elders? Isn't it just to help correct patriarch when he goes astray? Honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. There's nothing we can do even if patriarch doesn't listen. Anyway, I'm doing this for his own good." Everyone present nodded in agreement. Just as Xiahou Zhen had decided to go to the Guanzhong torture room to find Guan Xiu to ask for the person, the news of Ming Chen's death reached the Great Light Temple. Furthermore, due to the long journey, they only received news of Ming Chen's death and not his corpse. In the Vajra yard, Ming Chen's master, Hui Zhen, was stunned when he heard the news of Ming Chen's death. There was no anger or grief in his eyes, only endless sorrow. Hui Zhen was an elder of the Vajra yard. His cultivation base had long reached the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, he was not young either. He was already more than 100 years old, and his qi and blood had begun to decline. Ming Chen was not his only disciple, but he was his favorite disciple. This was because Ming Chen was very similar to him when he was young. They were both righteous but impulsive and easily angered. However, after so many years, Hui Zhen's temper had changed a lot after he suffered a few losses in the early years. Finally, he was enlightened as he grew older. However, he also lost the chance to become a martial Dao master. Although Ming Chen was not considered young, he was in the prime of his life. He still had a chance. As long as he could completely change his temper and understand the true meaning of the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra, he might have a chance to step into the peak of martial Dao in the future. It was a pity that Ming Chen did not survive this calamity in the end. He did not actually die at the hands of Chu Xiu. Instead, he died at the hands of his uncontrollable anger. However, although Hui Zhen knew this, he still had to take revenge for Ming Chen. This had nothing to do with other messy things. It was only because he was Ming Chen's master. It was as simple as that. Hui Zhen was not teacher seen. He could let go of his hatred for the sake of benefits when his own disciple died. He did not hate Chu Xiu, but he still wanted to kill Chu Xiu to take revenge. However, Hui Zhen was not sure if he could kill Chu Xiu with his own strength. The Great Light Temple's martial artists had extremely strong bodies. However, when a martial artist who specialized in cultivating the body grew old, once his qi and blood began to deteriorate, his own strength would also deteriorate very seriously. Whether he could kill Chu Xiu, who had an extremely strong battle record, in a one-on-one battle was still an unknown. Moreover, Chu Xiu was a torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room. He was considered an important figure in the Guanzhong torture room. If Hui Zhen wanted to kill Chu Xiu, he would first have to go through Guan Xiu. When one reached the level of a martial Tao master, it was no longer something that he could interfere with. Therefore Huizhen left his own monastery and went directly to the Vajrayard's first seat, Skunda the Venerable, Su Yan. Su Yan was a generation older than Huizhen, but he was much younger than Huizhen. He was not even 100 years old. He looked like a tall, middle-aged monk with a masculine appearance. Chapter 368. The Great Light Temple had existed for tens of thousands of years and had existed even before the great calamity of ancient times. Thus, there were several generations of disciples in the Great Light Temple. However, because of this, there would be cases of 200- or 300-year-old monks accepting a young disciple. This disciple's seniority was naturally very high. Su Yan was in such a situation. Among the warriors of the Su generation he was considered relatively young. Huizhen walked into the courtyard and clasped his hands together. Junior martial uncle. In the past, when Su Yan was young, Huizhen was already a martial monk instructor. However, because of seniority he could only call Su Yan martial uncle. He felt that it was a little awkward, so he added the word junior. This habit had not been changed until now. Seeing Huizhen, Su Yan sighed. I know about Mingchen's matter. Huizhen, my condolences. Grief appeared in Huizhen's eyes as he nodded. However, before he could say anything, Su Yan said, Huizhen, do you want me to go to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for Mingchen? However, I advise you to give up. I will not make a move and the temple will not allow you to make a move. The grudges between Mingchen and Chu Xiu have ended with Mingchen's death. This matter is over. What? Huizhen had a look of surprise on his face. He had never thought that Su Yan would actually say that. The warriors of the Vajra institution had always had a fiery temper. In Huizhen's opinion, even if he did not take the initiative to mention this matter, Su Yan would personally go to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for an explanation from Guanxiu. In the end, Su Yan did not intend to make a move and even wanted to stop him. Su Yan sighed and said, It's news from the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall. Senior Martial Brother Su Yun, the first seat of the Wangyan Zhen Hall, owed the previous hall master Chu Kuanga a favor. He did not return this favor when Chu Kuanga was alive. Now that the Guanzhong torture room wants him to return this favor, Senior Martial Brother Su Yun has already agreed. You know the weight of Senior Martial Brother Su Yun's words. Since he has spoken, I cannot refuse and neither can you. Huizhen let out a sigh. His body, which was already old and clumsy, now appeared even more hunched. The first seat of the Raging Thought Zen Hall, Dragon Tree of Nine Wonders Su Yun, was the strongest existence amongst the first seats of the 3 great Zen halls and the 6 great martial schools of the Great Radiance Monastery. He was acknowledged to be a powerful being who was second only to the abbot Reverend Sakya Su Ci. Moreover, Su Yun had an extremely high status in the Su generation. He used to be their eldest senior brother. As for why Su Ci had become the abbot in the end, it had always been a mystery to the outside world. This was because among the warriors of the Su generation, whether it was in the martial arts world or in the Temple of Great Light, Su Yun was the most famous. In the end, Su Ci had become the abbot. However, the relationship between the two parties did not change because of this. In the past, when Su Ci had just taken over the Temple of Great Light, Su Yun had given his all to help Su Ci stabilize the hearts of the people in the Temple of Great Light. It could be said that Su Ci was able to secure his position now without Su Yun's help. In the Light Temple, Su Yun's words were no different from those of the abbot. Since Su Yun said that he was prepared to return this favor, Su Yan could not refute and Huizhen could not refuse. Looking at Huizhen's hunched back, Su Yan shook his head helplessly. He had to give Su Yun face, but this was also because Ming Chen's position and strength were not enough. Therefore the Light Temple could not take revenge for him. If the person who died was the most outstanding disciple of their Great Light Temple's younger generation, Wisdom King Zongxian, then not only would Su Yun lose face, even if Abbot Su Ci did not want to take revenge, the entire Great Light Temple would still want to kill Chu Xiu to take revenge. The grudge with the Great Light Temple was temporarily put aside. Chu Xiu was currently recuperating in seclusion in the Guanxi land. Chu Xiu had also made use of the ferocious beast's heart he had obtained from the Skirich Tower. In fact, the best way to make use of the beast's heart was to bleed and refine it into a pill. Only then could the pill's effect be maximized. However, it was a pity that Chu Xiu did not have any alchemists under him, and he was a little worried about the alchemists in the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall. Hence, he could only waste some and directly extract their blood to refine. As soon as the blood from the beast's heart entered his body, it was split into half by the glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body. The other half was like a burning flame that instantly ignited Chu Xiu's body. The ancient beast's power was unimaginable to the current warriors. At least, the intensity of this power was unique among all the pills that Chu Xiu had taken. While he was refining the ferocious beast's blood, Chu Xiu had also borrowed this energy to temper his great King Kong divine energy, causing the strength of his body to rise to a whole new level. After a few days, the Ghost Hand King suddenly knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's seclusion chamber. He said that Qing Zhouhai was looking for him and that it was urgent. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. The 4 regions of Guangzhong had their own way of doing things. Usually they did not interfere with each other. If there was no incident that involved the entire Guangzhong torture room, they would rarely work together. Why was Qing Zhouhai looking for him now? However, Chu Xiu was not in a life-or-death seclusion this time. His injuries were almost healed and it was not a big deal to be interrupted. Therefore, Chu Xiu asked the Ghost Hand King to bring Qing Zhouhai to the meeting hall. When Chu Xiu walked into the meeting hall, Qing Zhouhai cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Congratulations to Official Chu for being promoted to the position of torture officer. I knew that Official Chu was not an ordinary person. Now it seems that my judgment was very accurate." In the past, Qing Zhouhai had a humorous personality and liked to joke around. However, his attitude towards Chu Xiu now was respectful and respectful. After all, his status was different. Now that Chu Xiu was a torture officer, he was on the same level as his master Xiao Yi. His attitude naturally could not be the same as before. Thinking of this, Qing Zhouhai sighed. In the past, he and Chu Xiu were both outstanding warriors of the younger generation in Guangzhong torture room. They were all on the same level, but Chu Xiu's advantage was more obvious. As a result, after a short time, Chu Xiu had already stood at the same level as his master. This also made Qing Zhouhai sigh in his heart. This was luck. Even if some people were stronger than Chu Xiu, they did not have the same status as Chu Xiu. "Brother Qing, there is no need for these polite words between us. What is the matter this time?" Chu Xiu asked someone to bring a cup of tea to Qing Zhouhai and asked. Qing Zhouhai looked solemn and said, "My master asked me to bring you a message. Xiahou Zhen, the head of the Xiahou family, came from Eastern Qi and has already stepped into the Guangdong area. Looking at his appearance, it is obvious that he is coming straight for you, so you have to be careful." Chu Xiu was stunned and said in surprise, "Xiahou Zhen came alone?" Qing Zhouhai nodded and said, "Only Xiahou Zhen came alone." Chu Xiu touched his chin and showed a trace of doubt in his eyes. The Xiahou family did not play by the rules. The great Guangming temple had been settled, and Chu Xiu also guessed the Xiahou family's reaction. Either it was left unsettled like the last time. Anyway, the person who died was not Xiahou Wujiang. Or it was to mobilize the power of the entire Xiahou family to suppress the Guangzhong torture room, such as finding some trouble for the Guangzhong torture room and forcing the Guangzhong torture room to punish Chu Xiu. Now, as the head of the family, Xiahou Zhen personally took action. Did this mean that he valued Chu Xiu? However, for Xiahou Zhen himself, there was some suspicion of bullying the young, which was not good to say. "Does the hall master know about this?" Chu Xiu asked. Qing Zhouhai nodded and said, "The head of the Xiahou family came in person. As soon as he stepped into the Guangdong area, master had already sent someone to inform the hall master." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Since the hall master knows, I don't have to worry about anything." With the protection of the hall master, Xiahou Zhen can't stir up any trouble. On the ranking list, the hall master is above Xiahou Zhen. Qing Zhouhai was a little speechless when he heard this. It seemed that this person regarded the hall master as his own fighter? There was something the hall master had to do. However, if Qing Zhouhai was the hall master, he would also choose to protect Chu Xiu. After all, Chu Xiu was now the face of the Guangzhong torture room and the most outstanding disciple of the younger generation. If someone wanted to kill Chu Xiu, and the Guangzhong torture room sat back and did nothing, how could the people of the Guangzhong torture room stand by and do nothing? Just like the Xiahou family, because the person who died this time was the 7th uncle, the group of elders dared to stop Xiahou Zhen from taking revenge. But if the person who died this time was Xiahou Wujiang, it would be a little too much for the group of elders to stop him. At this time, in front of the gate of Jihua City where the Guanxi branch was located, Xiahou Zhen looked at the merchants and warriors coming and going in silence. At this time, Xiahou Zhen did not reveal the aura of a martial Dao grandmaster, but in the eyes of others, this middle-aged man wearing a luxurious brocade robe with an extraordinary aura was not someone to be trifled with. So even if Xiahou Zhen blocked the way, no one dared to scold or complain. As the head of the Xiahou family, Xiahou Zhen had not stepped out of the Xiahou family for several years. Everyone thought that being the head of the Xiahou family was a very honorable position, but in fact only those who sat in this position knew how difficult it was. Just like what he was doing right now. He clearly wanted to take revenge for his own people, but as the patriarch he was unable to use even the slightest bit of his strength, and he even had to personally take action. Was there anything more ironic than this? This time Xiahou Zhen came alone. He couldn't use the power of the Xiahou clan because the elders prevented him from using it. However, he still had some trusted subordinates by his side, such as the seventh uncle. However, Xiahou Zhen didn't bring any of them because he knew that he probably wouldn't be able to kill Chu Xiu this time. After all, Chu Xiu was an elite of the younger generation of the Guanzhong torture room and the face of the Guanzhong torture room. This was Guanzhong and he came to the Guanzhong torture room to kill people. Would the Guanzhong torture room ignore him? Perhaps from the moment he stepped into Guanzhong, his whereabouts had already been reported. However, none of this mattered. Xiahou Zhen had to come this time to give himself an explanation, as well as an explanation to his trusted subordinates. Chapter 369. In the Guanxi branch, Cheng Zhouhai did not leave. After knowing that Guan Xiu would definitely make a move, Cheng Zhouhai also wanted to see the power of the fight between the two martial Dao masters. Cheng Zhouhai had been in the Guanzhong torture room for more than 10 years. He had been taken into the Guanzhong torture room since he was a teenager, but he had never seen Guan Xiu make a move. This was because Guan Xiu had completely stabilized the Guanzhong torture room at that time. All these years, the Guanzhong torture room had been seeking stability, so Guan Xiu did not have the chance to make a move. Perhaps there were a few times, but Cheng Zhouhai did not see it. There was some criticism about Guan Xiu's strength in the pugilistic world. Most people thought that Guan Xiu was not worthy of his current ranking. In the past, the previous hall master, Chu Kuanga's strength was outstanding and he had countless achievements. He once stopped a war with his martial arts alone, which made the pugilistic world gasp in admiration. Therefore, Chu Kuanga was ranked second on the honor roll at his peak. However, when Guan Xiu took over the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Kuanga had already spread the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room throughout the pugilistic world. It was equivalent to him inheriting the legacy of the Guanzhong torture room, so his achievements naturally could not be compared to Chu Kuanga's. However, because of the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room, he was still ranked 8th on the honor roll. This ranking was also criticized by the pugilistic world. Most people thought that Guan Xiu's ranking was a little too high. Based on the few times he made a move, it was not amazing. How could he be ranked 8th on the honor roll? One had to know that the person ranked above Guan Xiu was the Great Light Temple's Wangyin Zen Hall chief, Dragon Tree of Nine Wonders Master Su Yun. He was a dual cultivator of Zen and was known as the existence with the highest Zen cultivation in the Great Light Temple. At a certain stage he was even more brilliant than Abbot Su Ci. The person ranked below Guan Xiu was the Blue Dragon Society, Great Dragon Head, Crescent Green Dragon, Bu Tianan. He was an extreme madman who had killed countless people in his life. From a low-level killer in the Blue Dragon Society, it took him decades to become the Great Dragon Head. It was rumored that ever since Bu Tianan started killing people, he had never used assassination methods. He would just walk up to his target and tell them that he was going to kill them. He was extremely arrogant, but he had never failed. Therefore, it was rumored that when Bu Tianan made his move, he would only kill those he did not want to kill, and there was no one he could not kill. If someone could pay the price, he would even dare to kill the abbot of the Great Light Temple or the heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Sandwiched between the two of them, Guan Xiu's radiance was naturally very dim. The Jianghu people also had a lot of controversy about her. As a member of the Guanzhong torture room, Cheng Zhouhai naturally wanted Guan Xiu's strength to be as strong as possible. Unfortunately, there were too many rumors in the pugilistic world. In addition, Guan Xiu rarely fought. Even if he wanted to refute, he couldn't find a reason. Hence, Cheng Zhouhai also wanted to see how strong Hall Master Guan was. Just as Cheng Zhouhai was chatting with Chu Xiu in the Guanxi branch, an overwhelming pressure suddenly shrouded the entire Guanxi branch from the outside. It was as oppressive as a rainstorm, so much so that some people could not breathe. Chu Xiu and Cheng Zhouhai looked at each other. Both of their eyes revealed a hint of seriousness as they walked out together. At this time, at the entrance of the Guanxi branch, Xiahou Zhen stood with his hands behind his back. The aura around him affected heaven and earth, causing a layer of dark clouds to condense in the sky above the entire Guanxi branch. It looked extremely terrifying. Xiahou Zhen was alone, but his powerful aura was as terrifying as that of a powerful army. It made the people under Chu Xiu not dare to even move. This was the power of a martial Dao master. The power of a single person could fight against a powerful army. The realm of oneness of heaven and man only had a vague understanding of power in heaven and earth. On the other hand, a martial Dao master condensed the true martial core in his body and could truly affect the existence of heaven and earth. Cultivating martial arts, understanding heaven and earth. A martial Dao master could absorb the power of heaven and earth for their own use at any time. As long as the internal force did not erupt too fiercely, then a martial Dao master could absorb the power of heaven and earth unlimitedly and transform it into internal force to hurt people. Therefore, the saying that a martial Dao master could fight against a powerful army was not an exaggeration, but it really existed. A martial artist in the oneness of heaven and man realm could be killed by the number of people, but when it came to the existence of a martial Dao master, it could no longer be killed by the number of people. No matter how powerful your army was, even if no one was afraid of death, they would still be killed. This was why the real pellet state was called a martial Dao master. Only those who could establish a sect were qualified to be called a martial Dao master. Even if there was only one person in a sect, as long as he reached the martial Dao master realm, he was qualified to be a major sect in the underworld. In the eyes of the real major sects in the underworld, whether there was a martial Dao master in charge was a very obvious watershed. As for those martial arts forces without a martial Dao master in charge, in the eyes of the real major sects, they were just small fries. At this time, watching Chu Xiu walk out of the Guanxi branch, Xiahou Zhen looked at Chu Xiu without the slightest anger and hatred, only calmness. "You're Chu Xiu? You're younger than I expected." Xiahou Zhen, as his father, naturally knew Xiahou Wujiang's arrogance and pride. As a result, Xiahou Wujiang was defeated by this Chu Xiu again and again, and even seventh uncle was killed. Xiahou Zhen was really curious about Chu Xiu. At this time, facing a powerhouse of Xiahou Zhen's level, Qing Zhouhai, who was next to Chu Xiu, already felt a little depressed under Xiahou Zhen's aura, but Chu Xiu was still able to remain calm. Hearing that, Chu Xiu merely said indifferently, "Patriarch Xiahou, you've exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect this matter to attract you to take action personally, Patriarch Xiahou. Do I, Chu Xiu, really have such great prestige that I can attract a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse to seek revenge on me? Isn't Patriarch Xiahou afraid of being said by the people in the underworld for bullying the weak?" Xiahou Zhen looked up at the sky and he said calmly, "Seventh brother died in your hands, which is beyond my expectation. I have known seventh brother for more than 10 years. He is a very persistent guy. His master is a master from the Eastern Qi military who is proficient in spear skills and bow. But seventh brother said that he was born stupid, so he only specialized in one. If he didn't practice one to the acme of perfection, he would resolutely not practice the second. This made his master very helpless. Isn't such a person a little stupid?" Later, seventh brother's master was killed by the enemy, and he was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. I saw him on the road and threw him a bottle of medicinal pills. Seventh brother came back to life with this bottle of medicinal pills, took his revenge and found out my identity. He went to the Xiahou clan to find me, saying that he would use his life to repay my kindness. I thought he was joking and just wanted to use this as an excuse to come to the Xiahou clan to earn a living as a follower, so I agreed. I didn't expect him to be serious. What seventh brother has done for me over the years is worth countless bottles of medicinal pills. He said he would use his life to repay my kindness, and he really put his life on the line. Now that seventh brother is dead, I'm not here as the patriarch of the Xiahou clan, but as an elder brother to seek justice from you." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Justice? It was your son who wanted to kill me. If I didn't kill him, I would be the one who died. Who would I seek justice from?" Xiahou Zhen said expressionlessly, "Seventh brother addressed me as patriarch and treated me like a father or brother. If I didn't come this time, not only would others be bitterly disappointed, but I would also not be able to get over this." At this moment, a powerful voice came from the side. "Unfortunately, you came for nothing. Xiahou Zhen, you personally took part in a grudge between juniors. This is against the rules of the martial world." Guan Xiu walked over from the long street. Behind him was the third leader of the Criminal Apprehension Division, Si Ming, and over 10 experts from the division. Xiahou Zhen turned his gaze to Guan Xiu, but there was not a hint of emotion in his eyes. It would be strange if Guan Xiu didn't appear here. Xiahou Zhen hadn't interacted much with Guan Xiu. Although they were of the same generation, when Guan Xiu took over the Guanzhong torture room, Xiahou Zhen hadn't taken over the position of patriarch yet. Although they had met later on, they could only be considered acquaintances. Xiahou Zhen looked at Guan Xiu and said in a low voice, "Hall Master Guan, I only want an explanation. It has nothing to do with seniority. Chu Xiu killed my men, so I want him to pay the price. This isn't too much, right? Guan Xiu said indifferently, it's already too much for you to come to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for someone. Since you didn't interfere in the matters between juniors, I naturally wouldn't interfere either. But now that you've personally taken action as a hall master, I naturally won't sit by and watch someone take away my men from the Guanzhong torture room's territory. Xiahou Zhen, I know about the Xiahou family situation. If you want to take revenge, you have to figure out the internal affairs of the Xiahou family first. Otherwise, it'll be very embarrassing for a dignified patriarch like you to always go into battle. Upon hearing Guan Xiu's words, Xiahou Zhen's expression turned gloomy. After all, the Xiahou family was one of the 9 great aristocratic families. With so many eyes in the underworld watching, some matters couldn't be hidden from others. The underworld had also heard about the **T internal affairs of the Xiahou family. Now that Guan Xiu saw Xiahou Zhen come alone, he understood what was going on. It was nothing more than internal strife in the family. Xiahou Zhen snorted coldly and said, Hallmaster Guan, you don't have to worry about my Xiahou family's internal affairs. However, I have to give you a piece of advice. You helped Chu Xiu this time, but will you still be able to help him when he causes so much trouble in the future? Chu Xiu isn't a stable person. The Guanzhong torture room is too small. I'm afraid it won't be able to accommodate him. Guan Xiu, you helped Chu Xiu this time. Sooner or later you will regret it. How could Guan Xiu be provoked by Xiahou Zhen's words? Taking a step forward, Guan Xiu's aura rose like a mountain. She said in a deep voice, no one can take away my men from my Guanzhong torture room. Xiahou Zhen, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to retreat or not? Xiahou Zhen closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they had turned a deep golden color. The power of his essence soul had stirred up a yuan qi storm that swept over. Xiahou Zhen's actions had already explained everything. Chapter 370. After Xiahou clan's spirit commanding art was cultivated to its peak, it could be said to have a qualitative leap. The most direct observation was that it could evolve mental energy into spirit power, which could directly materialize. It could draw in the world and had infinite power. At this moment, Xiahou Zhen's spirit power shone brightly. The surrounding heaven and earth power was stirred by him into a storm that surged towards Guan Xiu. In the early stages of Xiahou clan's spirit commanding art, it controlled people. It directly used mental energy to control the other party in the heaven and earth power. But at Xiahou Zhen's level, he was the one who controlled the world. The endless storm swept over hundreds of feet, and its power soared into the sky. A casual attack was dozens of times more terrifying than a unity of heaven and man realm warrior. At this moment, Guan Xiu also moved. He took a step forward and formed a seal with both hands to lift the world. It was as if he was carrying a mountain and blasted it at Xiahou Zhen. In that instant, endless ripples appeared in midair and shattered in the face of the immense power. An invisible force swept through the world, but the power was tangible. It directly tore apart the powerful storm set off by Xiahou Zhen's spirit power. Divine Power 9 Transformations, Moving Mountain. The power of this attack was extremely shocking, but Guan Xiu's figure did not stop. He pushed forward with one hand and seemed to stir casually. The surrounding heaven and earth essence energy rippled like flowing water and surged towards Xiahou Zhen. Wherever the ripples passed, the protruding stones on the ground were instantly turned to dust. One could imagine how terrifying this move was. This was one of Guan Xiu's Divine Power 9 transformations, stirring the sea. In the past, when the younger generation competed for the God Weapon Convention in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu had seen Yu Qi attack. He had used the moving mountain and stirring the sea of the 9 transformations. However, the difference between Yu Qi's use of these two moves and Guan Xiu's was like heaven and earth. Only when Guan Xiu used this move could he be considered to have some of the divine power's power. At this moment, Xiahou Zhen's expression changed slightly. Guan Xiu's power was somewhat beyond his imagination. The 3 realms of spirit condensation were divided into 3 steps: Martial Dao True Pellet, Real Fire Spirit Refinement, and Heaven and Earth Mystic. As long as one stepped into the 3 realms of spirit condensation, they could be called a Martial Dao Grand Master. However, most Martial Dao Grand Masters were in the first realm, and Xiahou Zhen was naturally the same. At this time, Xiahou Zhen could clearly feel that Guan Xiu should be at the real pellet state, but his power seemed to be far beyond him. He had already reached the real spiritual spirit refinement. As soon as the sea stirrer was unleashed, The surrounding world seemed to become a prison of the sea. Worldly yuan qi and spiritual energy were stirred, forming an inescapable net that pressed down on Xiahou Zhen. Xiahou Zhen's body shone brightly, and the radiance of his primordial spirit shrouded his entire body. Then an illusory figure appeared behind him, holding a giant bow. The golden radiance of the primordial spirit condensed into an arrow. It looked somewhat similar to the seventh uncle's 13 soul-stealing arrows. As the essence soul arrow in Xiahou Zhen's hand shot out, golden light instantly filled the world. It tore through Guanxiu's sea-stirring divine power and headed straight for her glabella. The power of the soul was powerful, and it was very difficult to block it with power of the same element. Either the attacker also cultivated a secret technique of the soul, or they could only choose to block it with their own vital energy. In short, although the Yuan spirit was difficult to cultivate and it was a little extreme, its might was still extremely terrifying. Guanxiu's expression didn't change. He formed a seal with both hands and formed a very strange seal. He calmly said, "Exorcism." A faint light bloomed, and an extremely strange figure appeared behind Guanxiu. It had 3 faces and 6 arms, but it was extremely thin and small. Its aura was extremely strange, and it was condensed from the power of the soul and the power of the world. As soon as the figure appeared, Xiahou Zhen's primordial spirit arrow began to melt. It wasn't blocked, but it seemed as if it didn't exist at all. It directly melted into the world. Moreover, it wasn't just the primordial spirit arrow. Under the influence of the figure, the golden light of the primordial spirit around Xiahou Zhen began to rapidly collapse. The figure actually had a great suppressive effect on the power of the soul. It was simply the nemesis of the Xiahou clan's spirit control technique. Moreover, it wasn't over yet. Guanxiu waved his hand. He didn't have a saber in his hand, but a piercingly cold saber gleam appeared around him. The dense saber gleam floated around Guanxiu like a tornado. As Guanxiu took a step forward, the saber gleam surged towards Xiahou Zhen. Within a radius of 300 meters, everything was enveloped by the boundless saber storm. The scene was simply terrifying. Divine Power 9 transformations, call the wind. This series of exchanges made Chu Xiu, Qing Zhouhai, and the others below dizzy. It wasn't easy to learn from a battle between 2 martial Dao masters. However, they could also see that Guanxiu had the upper hand. To be precise, Guanxiu's strength couldn't even be considered to have the upper hand. It was simply a crushing defeat. Moreover, Guanxiu's cultivation technique also had a great restraining effect on Xiahou Zhen. Guanxiu's secret cultivation technique, Divine Power 9 transformations, wasn't passed down from ancient times. Instead, Guanxiu had researched it on his own. His Divine Power 9 transformations contained the foundations of countless cultivation techniques. Among them, there were even fragments of powerful ancient cultivation techniques. Guanxiu forcibly combined them together and extracted their advantages. That was why it only had 9 forms, but it included all kinds of martial arts in the world. It could also restrain any martial arts technique. Its power was unpredictable and extremely powerful. Under the blade storm, Xiahou Zhen's eyes flashed with a cold glint. He shouted, and the golden spirit aura around his body turned into sharp blades. His aura soared into the sky, wanting to tear everything in front of him apart. The Xiahou clan's spirit-driving art was good at offense, not passive defense. In front of Guanxiu, his spirit-driving art hadn't been able to exert its power. If Guanxiu continued to suppress him, Xiahou Zhen couldn't imagine the consequences. However, at this moment, Guanxiu's figure suddenly appeared behind Xiahou Zhen. She formed a fist seal and slammed it down on Xiahou Zhen. It was still moving mountain. No one noticed when Guanxiu had changed his figure. Even Chu Xiu and the others who had been watching Guanxiu fight in the outside world didn't notice. A powerful force descended from all directions. Xiahou Zhen twisted the sharp primordial spirit blade in his hand, but it was already too late. The power of moving mountain descended like Mount Tai pressing down on him. Moreover, this move seemed to carry the power of the gods, causing the primordial spirit blade in Xiahou Zhen's hand to shatter with a loud bang. A huge wave of primordial spirit power mixed with Gangqi erupted. Xiahou Zhen formed a seal with his hand, and the power of his soul drew upon the power of the world, condensing it into a shield in front of him. Unfortunately, the defensive power of the spirit-controlling art was somewhat lacking. With a loud bang, Xiahou Zhen's Yuan Qi shield shattered, and he was sent flying more than 30 meters away. His face was frighteningly pale. Xiahou Zhen stood where he was and his pale face was slightly red. Anyone could see that Xiahou Zhen's internal organs had been injured, but he forced himself to not vomit blood. Xiahou Zhen stared at Guan Xiu. After a while he said, "Guan Xiu, I underestimated you. Most people in Jianghu also underestimated you. If Chu Kuanga's brilliance did not cover you, you would have shone even brighter after taking charge of the Guanzhong torture room." Guan Xiu said expressionlessly, "The history of the Guanzhong torture room is very short compared to the large sects and families that have been passed down for thousands of years. Every generation of the Guanzhong torture room is a pioneer. Chu Kuanga and the other ancestors used their lives to open up the position of the Guanzhong torture room. Their brilliance will not stop me from shining. Instead, it will protect the Guanzhong torture room to move forward safely." The corners of Xiahou Zhen's mouth twitched and he turned to leave. This time he had suffered a loss and he had miscalculated. Xiahou Zhen came to Guanzhong alone to demand an explanation. In fact, he did not think that he could take away Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room by himself, or do something to Chu Xiu. However, if he fought Guan Xiu in front of everyone, as long as he gained the upper hand, he would be able to leave calmly. He would be able to give Old Seven and his subordinates an explanation. He would also be able to let everyone see that he, Xiahou Zhen, was a responsible family head. In the end, Xiahou Zhen did not expect that Guan Xiu, who had always been very low-key and was thought by the people of the Jianghu to be unworthy of his ranking on the honor list, was so powerful. His cultivation was probably not far from the true fire spirit refinement stage. He had only seen 4 of Guan Xiu's 9 divine transformations, and he could not resist it. The difference between the two could be described as crushing. At this time, on Chu Xiu's side, Qing Zhouhai and the others were also very excited when they saw Guan Xiu seriously injure Xiahou Zhen in a few moves. Since their hall master was so powerful, they naturally felt honored as well. However, Chu Xiu was also narrowing his eyes at this time. He was thinking about something different. The others were thinking that they had underestimated Guan Xiu, but Chu Xiu was thinking about how strong Mei Qinglian was. Chu Xiu did not understand the darkness demon sex cultivation method, but Mei Qinglian had been hiding beside Guan Xiu for so many years and could even faintly control her mind. One could imagine how strong Mei Qinglian was. The stronger one was, the stronger their mind was, especially people like Guan Xiu, who was known as the Iron Judge. For the sake of the Guanzhong torture room's rules, she would even cripple her own disciple. However, Mei Qinglian had been by Guan Xiu's side all these years. He did not know what methods she had used, but she could already influence most of Guan Xiu's decisions. This was shocking enough. Now, Chu Xiu was also a little curious about what Mei Qinglian wanted to do. If she just wanted to use the Guanzhong torture room to hide her identity, then Mei Qinglian had already done it. She dared to reveal her martial Dao master cultivation in the Guanzhong torture room headquarters, which was enough to prove her influence on Guan Xiu. In the end, Mei Qinglian was still secretly plotting something. Could it be that she wanted Guan Xiu, a martial Dao master, to become her puppet? Chapter 371. After repelling Xiahou Zhen, Guan Xiu turned her gaze to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. "Many thanks for helping me, Hall Master." Guan Xiu nodded and said faintly, "The Guanzhong torture room has helped you deal with this matter. Next time think twice before you act. Although the Guanzhong torture room has stabilized, it hasn't reached the point where we can expand at will." After reminding Chu Xiu, Guan Xiu directly left with her people. After nightfall, Chu Xiu didn't go to sleep, nor did he choose to cultivate. Instead he waited in the room. Since Guan Xiu had come, then Mei Qinglian should have also come. He still remembered that Mei Qinglian had said that she had something for him to do. Sure enough, not long after, Mei Qinglian's figure walked out of the black mist. She had a lazy smile on her face. "The trouble has been resolved. You can relax now." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It wasn't a big trouble, but this time, I really didn't expect Hall Master Guan's strength to be this strong." Mei Qinglian glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "What else do you think? If Guan Xiu was really mediocre, do you think Chu Kuanga would have stood his ground and helped him become the new Hall Master before he died?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Saintess, you can play Guan Xiu in the palm of your hand. Your strength is even more terrifying than Guan Xiu's." Mei Qinglian tidied up the hair in front of her eyebrows and snorted, "There's no need to probe. My Yin demon sex martial artists are good in this aspect. If I were stronger than Guan Xiu in a head-on fight, why would I need to hide by his side? By the way, you haven't forgotten what I told you last time, right?" Chu Xiu said, "Of course I haven't forgotten. Saintess, please tell me if you have any instructions." Mei Qinglian said, "Don't worry, what I want you to do will be good for you. It will help you make a name for yourself in the demonic path. Have you heard of the World Sword Sect Conference? Chu Xiu nodded and said, I've naturally heard of this. The Centennial Grand Meeting is a grand occasion for sword cultivators in the Jianghu. But what does this have to do with my demonic path? The so-called World Sword Sect meeting was a grand ceremony of sword principle held by the 5 major sword sects. Whether it was the 5 major sword sects or the numerous rogue cultivators in the Jianghu who use swords, they could all participate in it. They could compete in swordsmanship, discuss Tao, and learn from each other. Moreover, they would also give out some rewards to the most outstanding young sword principle experts in the meeting. As for the World Sword Sect meeting, Chu Xiu vaguely remembered that in the original plot, the scale seemed to be quite large. However, because only swordsmen participated, other than the 5 major sword sects and some warriors who use swords, very few people paid attention to this matter. Mei Qinglian sneered and said, originally it had nothing to do with it. The 5 major sword sects closed their doors and played internally. We demonic path people are not that bored, so naturally we won't interfere. But this time the 5 major sword sects insisted on making a big move. This time, not only sword cultivators can participate in the World Sword Sect meeting, but the warriors and elites of other sects can also participate. The most important thing is the reward. In the past World Sword Sect meeting, there were almost only 2 rewards. One was the world-famous sword, and the other was a very high-grade sword manual. And this time, because they invited other people, there were a few more rewards. One of them was the ancient demonic path's secret treasure, the damaged heavenly demon creation flag. You should know what the good fortune heavenly devil flag means to us demonic cultivators. Those swordsmen's actions are simply a slap to the face of our demonic cultivators. If our demonic cultivators were to swallow this insult, that would be the biggest joke in the world. So this time we demonic path people, whether it's the bright devil or the hidden devil lineage, have decided to put aside our prejudices and join forces to do something big. When Chu Xiu heard this, he raised his eyebrows. If that was the case, then the one who took the initiative to cause trouble this time was really not the demonic path. Chu Xiu knew about the reputation of the heavenly demon creation flag. This thing actually had nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult. It was the symbol of the entire demonic path. According to legend, after the great calamity of ancient times, the Taoist and Buddhist lineages had actually left behind a very comprehensive inheritance. However, the demonic path was relatively loose, and the entire thing was fragmented. Later, someone found the ancient demonic path's ancestral land in the ruins. From there, they found many powerful demonic path cultivation methods. Only then did the demonic path recover its former glory. The heavenly demon creation flag was found in the ancient demonic path's ancestral land. It was the symbol of the ancient demonic path's ancestral land. A large flag was a formation, and cultivating demonic techniques under the flag would yield twice the results with half the effort. Moreover, in the era after the great calamity, the demonic path's inheritance was almost severed. The heavenly demon creation flag was the symbol of the orthodox demonic path. Countless demonic path sects had obtained it before. Almost all the demonic path sects who had once held on to the heavenly demon creation flag claimed that they were the orthodox demonic path. However, none of the sects had kept the flag for too long. So, in general, the heavenly demon creation flag's status was similar to the dynasty's imperial jade seal. Although it did not have much use, its symbolic meaning was great. Later on, the heavenly demon creation flag naturally fell into the hands of the Kunlun devil cult. The Kunlun devil cult was also the sect that had held onto the heavenly demon creation flag for the longest time. However, as the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the heavenly demon creation flag was lost. Now, the people of Jianghu knew that the flag had fallen into the hands of the 5 great sword sects. In truth, even if the flag fell into the hands of the other demonic path sects, they would only keep a low profile and hide it. They would not take it out to claim that they were the orthodox demonic path. Doing so would simply be courting death. Without the Kunlun devil cult's strength, it was best not to get involved with the Kunlun devil cult's matters. Otherwise they would die a terrible death. Even so, the heavenly demon creation flag represented the orthodox demonic path in the past. It was the symbol of the demonic path. Now, however, it was treated as an item, a reward. It was simply a humiliation to the demonic path. Chu Xiu frowned. What are the 5 great sword sects trying to do by provoking the demonic path? My devil Dao lineage did not provoke them. They should know the consequences of doing so. My devil Dao will definitely not let this matter rest. Their World Sword Sect conference shouldn't be held so peacefully. A cold light flashed in Mei Qinglian's eyes. What are we doing? Of course, we are preparing to establish our might. We want to see who is qualified to be the head of the 5 great sword sects. Among the 5 great sword sects, Sword King City and Forgetful Sword Hut were the strongest on the surface. Windcloud Sword Tomb had the deepest foundation. No one knew how strong Windcloud Sword Tomb was. Only Hidden Sword Villa and Yu Palace were slightly weaker. They were not qualified to fight for the position of the head of the 5 great sword sects. The other 3 sects all wanted the position. Under normal circumstances they would fight each other. However, that would only waste their own strength and make others laugh at them. Even if someone won in the end, the loss would be the entire 5 great sword sects' strength. The 5 great sword sects said that they were united. Although it was just words, infighting rarely happened. Since there was no infighting, they could only choose another opponent to establish their might. The 5 great sword sects did not dare to think about the Taoist and Buddhist lineages. Since it was like this, the demonic path that had completely weakened and collapsed was a good choice. The 5 great sword sects are not afraid of us causing trouble. They are afraid that we will not cause trouble. Only then can they show their strength and see which sect is qualified to be the head of the 5 great sword sects. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was still around, our demonic path suppressed the world. Demonic flames overflowed the sky. How awe-inspiring was that? At that time, let alone provoking us, these righteous sects could only shout the slogan of exterminating demons and defending the Tao carefully in private. How could they be as sullen as they are now? This is an overt plot. If we don't go, the demonic path's reputation will fall and we will be trampled underfoot again. If we go, it will be exactly what the 5 great sword sects want. Anyway, our demonic path will suffer. Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "In the end, our demonic path also chose to go, didn't it?" Mei Qinglian snorted coldly and said, "The Kunlun devil cult is gone, but the other demonic path sects are still there. When it comes to our demonic path, how can we retreat? Don't the 5 great sword sects want to see the strength of our demonic path? Then this time we will let them see just how much strength our devil Tao has left. Without the Kunlun devil cult, once our bright demon and hidden demon join forces, even if we are not as good as the Taoist and Buddhist lineages, ordinary people will not be able to humiliate us." Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, "By the way, what are bright demon and hidden demon?" Mei Qinglian pointed at Chu Xiu and then pointed at herself and said, "You and I belong to the hidden demon lineage. The mark of the Kunlun devil cult on us is too strong. We belong to the kind of people that the righteous path sects must kill. We have to hide in the dark, so we are called hidden demon. The people of the phaseless demon sect also belong to the hidden demon lineage. As for the bright demon lineage, they are sects like the Northern Plains Evil Pole sect and the Miaojiang Moon worshipping cult. When the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, they had nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult, so they could walk in the Jianghu above board and not be chased by the righteous path sections. Previously, the hidden demon lineage had a lot of complaints about the bright demon lineage, thinking that they had betrayed the demonic path, so the two sides could be said to be incompatible like fire and water. But now, because the 5 sword sects were provoking the entire demonic path, the 2 lineages of demonic path temporarily put down their prejudice and prepared to join forces this time. I'm the only one left of my shadow demon sect, but as you can see, I can't leave Guangzhou, so you will represent my shadow demon sect to participate in this demonic path conference. When the time comes, as the representative of my shadow demon sect, no matter how much effort you put in, you will get a share of the profits after the conference. It can also increase your prestige in the demonic path. Anyway, this is a good job." Chu Xiu nodded and asked, "When is the World Sword Sect Conference? Where is it?" Mei Qinglian said, 2 months later, West Chu's Floating Jade Mountain. But you have to go to the Bone Tree Villa next to Floating Jade Mountain in a month to participate in the Demonic Path Conference. At this time, Chu Xiu's expression did not change, but his heart was in turmoil. He finally remembered what had happened. In the original plot, this was not called the World Sword Sect Conference, but the famous Righteous Path and Demonic Path Conference on Floating Jade Mountain. Chapter 372. Previously, when Mei Qinglian mentioned the World Sword Sect Conference, Chu Xiu was still a little doubtful. Although he had heard of the World Sword Sect Conference in the original plot, it shouldn't have been so big. Only now did Chu Xiu realize that in the original plot, it wasn't called the World Sword Sect Conference, but the Righteous and Demonic Battles on Floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu had also guessed the reason. It was probably because the 5 major sword sects had caused too big of a commotion, so big that it implicated both the righteous and demonic sections. Both sides fought fiercely on Floating Jade Mountain. ultimately turning the World Sword Sect Conference into a war between the righteous and demonic sections. Moreover, this matter affected the entire pugilistic world. It could be said that it was the biggest conflict between the righteous and demonic sects since the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult. Since that was the case, this matter wasn't like what Mei Qinglian had said, where he only needed to represent the Yin demon sect to go through the motions and he would be able to get all sorts of benefits. Instead, there was a huge risk involved. Although that was the case, Chu Xiu didn't want to reject it. The reason was simple. While there were risks, there were also huge benefits in the war between the righteous and demonic sects. Fighting in the pugilistic world would always improve more than training in seclusion. Chu Xiu also realized that he was actually a militant. Although he would sometimes use some schemes to Chu Xiu as long as it could be solved with fists and knives, he was actually too lazy to use his brain. Fortune came from danger. This was actually the most commonly used truth in the pugilistic world. Unless it was those who were blessed with great luck, sitting at home, divine skills would come from the heavens. The remaining 99% of the people in the pugilistic world wanted to become stronger, but they still had to rely on themselves to fight. Chu Xiu looked at Mei Qinglian and said, "How should I go to the World Sword Sect Conference? I'm the Guanxi penal officer after all. It seems a little troublesome to leave my fief without permission." Mei Qinglian stood up and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Let me handle it." This time the 5 great sword sects wanted to be in the limelight. They put on a grand show and sent out quite a number of posts. Naturally, one of them was from the Guanzhong torture room. "At that time, I will let you represent the Guanzhong torture room to attend the World Sword Sect Conference. When the Bone Tree Villa's Devil Dao Alliance meeting begins, you should go and find that kid from the Phaseless Demon Sect, Lu Jin. He will definitely be there this time. The Phaseless Demon Sect is one of the stronger ones in my hidden devil lineage. That brat Lu Jin also owes me a favor. I have already informed him. This time he will tell you what to do." Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. With Mei Qinglian's control over Guanxiu, it was normal for her to be able to do this. In the next few days, Chu Xiu spent most of his time cultivating in the torture hall branch. As for sending Chu Xiu to represent the Guanzhong torture room to attend the World Sword Sect Conference, Guanxiu quickly gave the order. Most of the warriors in the Guanzhong torture room were somewhat dissatisfied with Chu Xiu participating in the World Sword Sect Conference as a representative. They felt that Guanxiu was too biased towards Chu Xiu. It was fine to send Chu Xiu to participate in the previous God Weapon Conference, but that was only an arena for the younger generation. There was indeed no one in the younger generation of the Guanzhong torture room who was stronger than Chu Xiu. But the World Sword Sect Conference this time included all the heroes of the large sects in the Jianghu. As a spectator, he represented the power of the sect behind him. He would definitely be in the limelight. What ability did Chu Xiu have to represent the entire Guanzhong torture hall? In terms of seniority, the other 3 disciplinary officers were more senior than Chu Xiu. In terms of strength, which of the leaders of the punishment hall were not stronger than Chu Xiu? In the end, this person had to be Chu Xiu. Among the other disciplinary officers, Xiao Yi and Chu Simo did not say anything. Only Yin Badong objected the most. He even specially wrote a few letters to Guanxiu, asking her to carefully consider this matter. However, he was ignored by Guanxiu in the end. This made Yin Badong feel helpless. After receiving the notice, Chu Xiu made some arrangements for the Guanxi area before heading to West Chu. Actually, there were no arrangements. Chu Xiu could be said to be the strongest and most murderous of all the disciplinary officers that had controlled the Guanxi area over the years. Although Chu Xiu's way of doing things was criticized by the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area, as long as Chu Xiu did not die, the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area would not dare to provoke Chu Xiu's dignity. The 2 largest clans in the Guanxi area had been completely destroyed by Chu Xiu in one day. The bloodstains on the ground of the Wei and Zhang families' ancestral lands had not been cleaned yet. Who would dare jump out and seek death? Therefore, Chu Xiu was very assured in the Guanxi area. Chu Xiu had never been to the land of West Chu before, but among the 3 kingdoms, West Chu was the most special. Among the dynasties in the world, as long as there was a split, there would be one land of West Chu. Although it might not be called West Chu, this also proved that the land of West Chu was the most unstable and difficult to unify. The reason was very simple. The land of West Chu had the feeling of a barren land with undeveloped forests everywhere. There were even some fierce beasts that had survived since ancient times. 80% of the West Chu area was not suitable for humans to live in. Only a few powerful and confident large sects would establish a sect in this kind of place. They wanted peace and quiet as well as the rich cultivation resources there. Because there were few people, the power of the West Chu imperial court was not large, but the martial arts were flourishing. Although it could not compare to the Eastern Qi, it was a bit stronger than the Northern Yen. The martial arts were flourishing while the imperial court was weak. Over the years, the West Chu imperial court rarely participated in the struggle between the three countries. Most of the time, when the Eastern Qi was strong, they would ally with the Northern Yen to suppress the Eastern Qi. But when the Eastern Qi suffered a loss, West Chu would immediately retreat, as if they did not have any initiative. In reality, it was not that West Chu did not want to fight, but it was impossible for West Chu to attack the Central Plains with their strength. Being able to maintain the current situation was not an easy matter for West Chu. The official road to West Chu was a little narrow. Along the way, Chu Xiu saw many warriors with swords in a hurry. It was obvious that they were preparing to participate in the World Sword Sect Conference. The World Sword Sect Conference was only held once every 100 years. Not only would the young generation of swordsmen compete with each other, there would also be grandmaster-level swordsmen sparring with each other. There would also be sword grandmasters from various large sects giving public lectures. It could be said that as long as the rogue warriors went, they would definitely not be at a disadvantage. And this time, the World Sword Sect Conference had opened its conditions to the public. All the people of the pugilistic world could come and watch the ceremony. This attracted even more warriors to come and join in the fun. Chu Xiu went straight to the Qingzhou prefecture, which was not far from Floating Jade Mountain. Mei Qinglian had already informed Mr. Liu of the Phaseless Demon Sect. If Mr. Liu arrived, he would naturally come and inform him. Holding the invitation for the World Sword Sect Conference, Chu Xiu went straight to the Sword Deviate Pavilion of the Qingzhou Prefecture. The Sword Separation Pavilion could be considered as a combination of a restaurant and an inn. However, one could tell from its name that it would only serve the people of Jianghu. During the period of the World Sword Sect competition, the Sword Separation Pavilion would only serve sword cultivators. The other non-sword cultivators would only be qualified to enter if they had the invitation to the World Sword Sect competition. As for the other rogue cultivators, they could only be rejected. After all, although the Sword Separation Pavilion was big, it had limited space. Although this would attract some criticism, no one dared to cause trouble. This was because the Sword Deviate Pavilion was the business of the Forgotten Sword Hut. Among the 5 major sword sects, the Forgotten Sword Hut's strength was definitely at the forefront. The warriors of the Forgotten Sword Hut cultivated the way of the sword. They comprehended sword intent, understood the principles of the sword, and practiced sword techniques. They progressed step by step and had an incomparably solid foundation. Therefore, from the day the Forgotten Sword Hut was established, it had always been one of the 5 major sword sections. In history, it was either the head of the 5 major sword sects or it was in the middle. In any case, it had never been like the Yunnu Palace. When it was glorious, it was incomparably powerful, but when it declined, it was beyond recognition. The strength of the Forgotten Sword Hut had always been very stable. Moreover, in this World Sword Sect Conference, the Forgotten Sword Hut was also the existence with the most ability to become the head of the 5 major sword sections. In front of the Sword Deviate Pavilion, 2 disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut, dressed in white and holding swords, cupped their hands towards Chu Xiu and said, "Friend, if you are not a sword cultivator, please show the invitation of the World Sword Sect to enter the Sword Deviate Pavilion." The attitude of these 2 warriors from the Forgotten Sword Hut could be considered to be very polite. After all, during the World Sword Sect Conference, countless experts came and went. The 5 major sword sects did not want to cause trouble, so the disciples they sent out to receive him were smooth and slick people. They would not cause any misunderstandings because of their attitude. Chu Xiu handed over the invitation. One of the disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut looked at it and immediately cupped his hands. "So it is the official Chu of the Guanzhong torture room. Please enter." As he spoke, the disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut immediately said in a loud voice, "The representative of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu, official Chu, has arrived." As he spoke, a disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut immediately walked out and led Chu Xiu into the Sword Deviate Pavilion. This was not because the disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut had a good attitude and good service. It was because they had no other choice. During this time, many warriors had come to the Sword Deviate Pavilion. Some had enmity between them, some had enmity between sects, and there were even countless who did not like each other. As a warrior, it was almost impossible to find someone with a good temper. Fighting was a common thing. Over the past few days, countless warriors had fought many times over a seat. Thus, the warriors of the Forgotten Sword Hut had learned their lesson. As long as someone came with an invitation, the people of the Forgotten Sword Hut would arrange a seat for them. This was to prevent them from fighting over a seat. At this time, there were also many warriors in the Sword Deviate Pavilion looking at Chu Xiu. Other than the warriors of Eastern Qi, the others only glanced at Chu Xiu before looking away. Although Chu Xiu was from the Northern Yan, he could only be considered a minor figure in the Northern Yan. He had never been to West Chu before, so the people of these two places had only heard rumors about Chu Xiu. On the other hand, in Eastern Qi, Chu Xiu's reputation was great. Just as the disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut had arranged a seat for Chu Xiu, a middle-aged warrior sitting across from Chu Xiu slammed the table and snorted coldly. Chapter 373. Some people had friends all over the world, such as young Marquis Wen Lu Fengxian. Others had enemies all over the world. They were referring to Chu Xiu. The middle-aged martial artist who had slammed the table was at the unity of heaven and man realm. On his back were two long swords, one red and one blue. He showed undisguised malice to Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu only felt that he looked familiar. He couldn't remember who he was. The forgetful Sword Hut disciple who had brought Chu Xiu and slapped his head helplessly. This kind of thing had happened more than once or twice in the past few days. Each time, the forgetful Sword Hut had to come and mediate. As disciples of the forgetful Sword Hut, they were already annoyed. Just as the Forgotten Sword Hut disciple was about to speak, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You have a grudge against me? But there are many people who want to cause trouble for me in this world. If you want to cause trouble for me, then tell me your name first. Otherwise, I won't recognize who you are." When Chu Xiu said this, everyone present was stunned. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as this. Just how many people had Chu Xiu offended that he couldn't even remember who his enemies were? The middle-aged man's expression was also frighteningly gloomy. In reality, he didn't want to cause trouble for Chu Xiu this time. This was the territory of the Forgotten Sword Hut. He had to give the Forgotten Sword Hut face. Also, before he came, his master had instructed that he had to keep a low profile during this World Sword Sect conference. Otherwise, he would have started making things difficult the moment Chu Xiu entered. In the end, the Forgotten Sword Hut disciple had unintentionally brought Chu Xiu to his side. This way he could no longer ignore him. That was why he slammed the table and snorted. However, he had never expected that Chu Xiu didn't even know who he was. The middle-aged martial artist gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Azure Water Sword Sect, Do Guangxin. Chu Xiu, are you purposely humiliating my Azure Water Sword Sect? You crippled my junior. I will settle this debt with you sooner or later." Chu Xiu slapped his head. Only now did he remember who this person was. After all, Do Guangxin had once brought people to surround him on Shangmeng Mountain. However, Chu Xiu hadn't met Do Guangxin face to face. He had only seen him a few times from afar, so he couldn't remember. Leisurely sitting down, Chu Xiu indifferently said, "Shunbai is a character. Although he was defeated by me, he is stronger than you. If it was Shunbai, if he didn't want to kill me, then he wouldn't be blowing his beard and glaring at me, making such a useless gesture. On the other hand, if Shunbai wanted to kill me, he wouldn't care whether or not this was the territory of the Forgetting Sword Hut. He would come directly with his sword. Now that Shunbai has been crippled by me, your Azure Water Sword Sect doesn't even have a worthy disciple. This is truly lamentable. You are the eldest Shixiang, yet you don't even have Shunbai's boldness. Your master should be very disappointed with you, right?" Do Guangxin indeed didn't want to make a move. Azure Water Sword Sect was currently at a low point, and he knew that his master was treating Shunbai. His junior still had a chance of survival. Therefore, when he came to participate in the World Sword Sect conference, Lu Gongyuan had already told him to endure and keep a low profile. This time, Azure Water Sword Sect was just a formality. Needless to say, Chu Xiu's mouth was vicious. With just a few words, Do Guangxin was infuriated. In fact, what truly provoked him was when Chu Xiu said that he was inferior to Shunbai and made Lu Gongyuan disappointed. The entire Azure Water Sword Sect knew that Lu Gongyuan used all of Azure Water Sword Sect's resources to nurture Shunbai. This was something that Lu Gongyuan tacitly agreed to as a senior and didn't have any jealousy or dissatisfaction. He could accept these things, but he couldn't allow outsiders to say it. The two long swords on Do Guangxin's back were unsheathed at the same time. The chilling ice sword Qi and the scarlet flame sword Qi fused together. Fire and water were incompatible, but for Do Guangxin, they complemented each other and their prowess was extraordinary. Back when Chu Xiu was at the physical invulnerability realm, he could only dodge like a mouse when facing Do Guangxin, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm. Now that he was facing the so-called unity of heaven and man realm, Chu Xiu's mental state had a clear change. The so-called unity of heaven and man was nothing more than this. It wasn't like he hadn't killed before. Chu Xiu sat still and formed the great Vajra wheel seal. Because he cultivated the great Vajra divine powers, when Chu Xiu executed Buddhist martial arts, his Dipper Chi actually had a trace of Buddha's golden radiance. It was as though he truly had the might of a Vajra. There was a loud bang and Do Guangxin's sword light was torn apart. Chu Xiu's figure remained unmoved, but Do Guangxin took 3 steps back, and the chair under his feet was directly shattered. The commotion from their side was too big, and everyone present looked towards Do Guangxin and Chu Xiu. All of their faces revealed a surprised expression. It might not be a new thing for a young elite on the Longhu rankings to defeat a senior martial artist, but Do Guangxin was still a well-known figure. He was the mainstay of the Azure Water Sword sect, and Lu Gongyuan's first disciple. Now that he was so easily defeated by Chu Xiu, it seemed like he was a little too useless. In fact, Do Guangxin was accepted as a disciple by Lu Gongyuan in the past, and he was only second to Lu Gongyuan in the Azure Water Sword sect. Do Guangxin wasn't mediocre, but Chu Xiu was a little too strong. After cultivating the great Vajra divine powers, Chu Xiu could be considered to have made up for his last shortcoming. In the eyes of martial artists of the same rank, the current Chu Xiu was simply invulnerable. With a strong and profound inner force, coupled with the spiritual force that wasn't considered strong, but definitely wasn't weak either. Finally, after cultivating the great Vajra divine powers, Chu Xiu was almost invincible within the 5 Chi's origin realm. Even among the martial artists at the unity of heaven and man realm, Chu Xiu was confident that he could defeat most of them. Just as Do Guangxin flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to continue attacking, and when Chu Xiu revealed his killing intent, a long sword that was completely condensed by the power of ice suddenly descended and stood upright in front of Chu Xiu and Do Guangxin. This long sword was completely condensed by the water vapor in the air. Could be said that it was a sword formed by the power of heaven and earth. It was needless to say what kind of status one had to have to achieve this. A figure walked down from upstairs and looked at the scene below. In a cold voice he said, "Have you all fought enough? If you want to fight, wait until the World Sword Sect Conference begins. My Sword Separation Pavilion is not a place for you to settle your personal grudges." The martial artist who walked down had a monstrous aura around him. He was impressively a martial arts grandmaster. Furthermore, his appearance was also very strange. He was in his 40s and had slanted eyebrows. His face was slouched and he had a naturally bitter look. It was hard for people to not be able to hold back their laughter when they saw him. However, although this person in front of them looked a little funny, no one dared to laugh in front of him. This person's temper was notoriously bad. He was the master of the Sitting Sword Hut's South Sword Peak, painstaking sword Yen Bujue. He could be said to be a strange freak. The disciples of the Sitting Sword Hut had a calm temperament and had always had a good reputation in the martial world. However, Yen Bujue was the exact opposite. He could not get along with anyone and his temper was also abnormally violent. In his early years he had offended many people. If he had not been taken in by the Sitting Sword Hut, Yen Bujue would most likely have been beaten to death. However, even after joining the Sitting Sword Hut, Yen Bujue's temper did not change. He was still overbearing and strong. When the Sitting Sword Hut dealt with outsiders, it was inevitable that they would use a carrot and a stick. This Yen Bujue was that big stick. Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said, "Senior Yen, everyone here is watching. I did not make the first move. Of course, if some people are not convinced and want to go out and fight again, I, Chu Xiu, will accompany them to the end." At the side, Do Guangxin was so angry that his face turned red. However, with Yen Bujue in front of him, in addition to the power of Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal just now, he had already sensed it. If he forcefully fought, he would not gain any advantage. Thinking of his master's instructions, Do Guangxin could only suppress the anger in his heart and directly leave. Seeing this scene, everyone present looked at each other in dismay. The Azure Water Sword sect had actually declined to such a state? Compared to Chu Xiu, Do Guangxin was a senior in the pugilistic world and was an existence that was only inferior to Lu Gongyuan in the Azure Water Sword sect. But in the end, in the hands of Chu Xiu, Do Guangxin could only swallow his anger and retreat. The Azure Water Sword sect's reputation was completely lost. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and looked at Do Guangxin. He actually hoped that Do Guangxin would disregard everything and make a move on him. That way he would have the opportunity to kill Do Guangxin openly. This wasn't because Chu Xiu had a murderous nature, but ever since he crippled Shen Bai, he had already formed an irreconcilable grudge with the Azure Water Sword sect. It could also be said that this was the only irreconcilable grudge that Chu Xiu had formed. Chu Xiu killed 7th uncle and defeated Xiahou Wujiang multiple times. He only offended Xiahou Zhen, the patriarch's bloodline, and not the entire Xiahou clan. And when Chu Xiu killed Ming Chen, he only offended Ming Chen's master's bloodline. It couldn't even be considered as the entire Vajra institution. But when Chu Xiu crippled Shen Bai, he crippled the future hope of the entire Azure Water Sword sect. This was definitely an irreconcilable grudge. Therefore, when facing an Azure Water Sword sect disciple, Chu Xiu didn't need to show mercy. He didn't need to think about the consequences. One word, kill. Yan Bujue glanced at Chu Xiu and spoke indifferently. Dragon Tiger ranking 6th rank Chu Xiu, I have heard of you. Among the top 10 elites of the Dragon Tiger rankings, you appear the most frequently and your ability to cause trouble isn't bad. But in my Forgotten Sword Hut's territory, if you still don't restrain yourself, then don't blame me for not giving your Guanzhong torture room any face. Chu Xiu spoke indifferently. Senior Yan, you are wronging me. I, Chu Xiu, never take the initiative to cause trouble. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. But every time trouble finds me, I can only choose to retaliate. Taking a deep look at Chu Xiu, Yan Buha spoke, let's hope so. Finishing his statement, Yan Buha immediately turned and left. Chu Xiu continued to sit here and leisurely ate his meal. But this time no one cast their eyes on Chu Xiu. This person wasn't someone to be trifled with. Chapter 374. Late at night, in the guest room of the Sword Separation Pavilion, a knocking sound came from outside Chu Xiu's door. Chu Xiu opened the door. An unfamiliar middle-aged man in white stood there and said softly, "It's me." Hearing this voice, Chu Xiu immediately realized that this person was Mr. Lu. Chu Xiu said in surprise, "This is the Sword Separation Pavilion, the territory of the Forgetful Sword Hut. Mr. Lu, aren't you afraid of something happening by appearing here so openly?" Mr. Lu closed the door and chuckled. He pointed at his face and said, "If I didn't even have this little ability, my phaseless demon sect would have been exterminated countless times already. Don't worry, even if Yan Bubu stood in front of me, he wouldn't be able to see any flaws. My current identity is a standard righteous person, a wandering cultivator from Shangyang of Eastern Qi, Pine Wave Sword, Su Songtao." Chu Xiu said with some curiosity, "Then what about the real Su Songtao?" Mr. Lu casually waved his hand and said, "Of course he's dead. He's dead to the point where not even dregs are left." Chu Xiu nodded and didn't say anything. The methods of the demonic path had always been this ruthless. He, Chu Xiu, who was pretending to be a descendant of the demonic path, naturally wouldn't be any better. Although Mr. Lu's attitude towards him was very polite and amiable, in reality, as an expert of the phaseless demon sect, Mr. Lu was definitely the kind of demonic path villain who killed without blinking an eye. Waving his hand, Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze and said, "I didn't expect that you actually have a relationship with the Holy Maiden. She already told me before that you will be participating in the Demonic Paths Alliance meeting on behalf of the Shadow Demon sect. Such a good thing has fallen onto your head. Don't tell me you've joined the Shadow Demon sect?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not. It's just that there's no one in the Shadow Demon sect at the moment, and the Holy Maiden is busy, so she asked me to make this trip. Right, Mr. Lu, is the Holy Maiden very strong in the Shadow Demon sect? Is his identity very special?" Mr. Lu said, "Martial masters are naturally very powerful. Moreover, it's not that the Saintess identity is special, but the Yin demon ancestor's identity is special. In the past, among the sects attached to the Kunlun Devil cult, the Yin demon sect's relationship with the Kunlun Devil cult is one of the closest. Even the Yin demon sect's sect master and saintess can become the devil envoys of the Kunlun Devil cult. Their status is even higher than my phaseless demon sect. However, in recent years, the Yin demon sect had been more or less annihilated by the righteous sections. Moreover, because of a traitor, the Yin demon sect had almost been destroyed. Now only the saintess was left. However, even if the Holy Maiden was the only one left, as long as the inheritance of the Yin demon sect existed, her status would still be there. The saintess once helped me in the past, so I definitely won't let you suffer a loss during this Demonic Path Alliance meeting. Pack up, you can follow me to the Bonewood Villa now. However, you have to conceal your identity and change it to a Demonic Path's identity. In recent years, the Demonic Path has become somewhat impure. There might be some traitors mixed in. The Yin demon sect was almost destroyed because of a traitor. Your identity in the Jianghu is not bad. No one will suspect that the Guanzhong torture room's torture officer is a descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. Therefore, you have to conceal your identity well to avoid being recognized and causing unnecessary trouble. Chu Xiu nodded. He knew this even without Mr. Lu saying it. These days, even the righteous paths people could not be trusted, let alone those evil and ruthless demonic paths people. Because of Mr. Lu's relationship with the phaseless demon sect, as long as Chu Xiu used his identity as the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, Mr. Lu would not harm him. However, other sects that did not have a close relationship with the Kunlun devil cult, or even the bright demon sect that had betrayed the Kunlun devil cult in the past, could do anything. Chu Xiu took out a mask with the Blue Dragon Society symbol on it and put it on. He changed into a hoarse and deep voice and said, "I am a newcomer of the demonic path, Lin Yi. Nice to meet you, Mr. Lu." A playful smile appeared on Mr. Lu's face as he said, "The Blue Dragon Society's black iron mask? This is a pretty good item. However, it's best if you don't use those more conspicuous martial arts. Otherwise, people will be able to deduce your identity." After leaving the sword separation pavilion, Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu to the Bone Tree Villa. The so-called Bone Tree Villa was actually a deserted villa. Its name was very strange, but its origin was even more terrifying. Legend has it that the master of the Bone Tree Villa was a righteous hero. In the end, because he cultivated a demonic path's secret technique, he went berserk. He had to use human blood and flesh to concoct pills in order to maintain his vitality. Therefore, this righteous hero used his reputation to invite many people of the Jianghu to the Bone Tree Villa as guests. In the end, none of those people of the Jianghu walked out of the Bone Tree Villa alive. Moreover, apart from using the flesh and blood of those who were killed to concoct pills, their bones were also used as materials to reinforce the entire Bone Tree Villa. This was also the origin of the so-called Bone Tree Villa. It was said that because the master of the Bone Tree Villa was exposed, he was killed by many righteous heroes. The Bone Tree Villa was also completely deserted. However, because there were too many people who died here, the flesh and blood of those who died unjustly were used to concoct pills, and their bones were used as materials. Therefore, every midnight, the Bone Tree Villa would be filled with the cries of wronged ghosts. It was very terrifying. When Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu to the Bone Tree Villa, he discovered that this place was indeed a bit terrifying. The originally dilapidated villa seemed a bit gloomy and terrifying. The buildings of the Bone Tree Villa were also very strange. They were either pitch black in color, or a strange grayish-white color. Looking at them gave people a strange feeling. When they were approaching the Bone Tree Villa, Mr. Lu said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, "Chu, you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. However, you have not had any dealings with the current demonic path. The current relationship between demonic paths is more complicated than in the past. However, you don't need to care about this. All you need to know is that you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult, and your status is more respected than most people. You are the representative of the Yin demon sect, and the people standing behind you are also more powerful than most people. That is enough. The bright devil lineage is not on good terms with my Yin Ma lineage. This group of people betrayed the Holy Church in exchange for an ignoble existence. Although they have accumulated a lot of strength over the years, my Yin Ma lineage is not weak in the dark. To resist external forces, we must first stabilize the internal forces. This so-called demonic path alliance is actually a plot within the demonic path before we can unite against the external forces." Chu Xiu nodded. He was very good at using the tiger's skin as a flag. Even without Mr. Lu's teaching, Chu Xiu understood this. As they walked into the Bone Tree Villa, two black-clothed martial artists with the three-flower realm cultivation suddenly appeared and shouted, "Who are you?" Mr. Lu threw out two tokens. The two martial artists glanced at them and immediately handed them to Mr. Lu. They cupped their hands and said, "So you are the representatives of the phaseless demon sect and the Yin demon sect. Please come in." Chu Xiu glanced at the two and asked, "Who are the guards?" Mr. Lu said indifferently, "They are from the 6th demon sect in Hainan. The 6th demon sect is considered to be neutral in the demonic path. Strictly speaking, it is the bright demon sect. However, when my sacred sect was destroyed, the 6th demon sect did not choose to betray us, nor did they choose to escape. Those righteous sects did not touch them completely because the 6th demon sect was far away in Hainan, far away from the Central Plains. They did not have much of a presence. When the sacred sect was completely destroyed, they only received the news. Therefore, the 6th demon sect did not betray the sacred sect." We, the hidden demon sect, naturally have no hostility towards them. The sixth heavenly demon sect is presiding over this Devil Alliance meeting. Otherwise, if we from the bright devil lineage and the hidden devil lineage were to sit together, I'm afraid we would start fighting each other before we could even attack the 5 great sword sects. As he spoke, Mr. Lu had already stepped into the Bone Tree Villa with Chu Xiu. At this time, the originally dilapidated Bone Tree Villa had been cleaned up, but the inside was still gloomy and terrifying. In the hall of the Bone Tree Villa, cold and evil demonic chi filled the entire hall. The entire hall was clearly divided into 2 factions. On one side there were more people from the Bright Demon Sect, while on the other side, there were fewer people from the Hidden Demon Sect. When they saw Mr. Lu bringing Chu Xiu in, everyone present turned to look at the 2 of them. Mr. Lu waved his hand and revealed his original appearance. Only then did many people from the Hidden Demon Sect greet Mr. Lu. On the side of the Bright Demon lineage, a martial artist of the unity of heaven and man realm, who was dressed in a colorful robe with strange patterns, suddenly let out a strange laugh and said, "Lu Jin, I heard that your phaseless demon sect has already fought with the Hidden Sword Villa and suffered a loss. In the end you still couldn't get the demon sword Eternal Yearning. Are you here for revenge? And who is that beside you? The Demon Dao Alliance is not a place that anyone can participate in. What is the meaning of you bringing a junior martial artist who is only at the 5 Chi's origin realm? Is he here to see the world?" This martial artist in the unity of heaven and man realm was dressed strangely, but his appearance was very handsome and bewitching. He was so handsome that people could not tell whether he was a man or a woman. Even his voice carried a gentle aura, giving people goosebumps after hearing it. Mr. Lu's face darkened and he said coldly, "Chou Xiangzi, mind your 5 poison sects business. You have the nerve to ridicule my phaseless demon sect? In the past, your 5 poison sect coveted the sword insects of the Storm Sword Tomb. Did you forget that several of your elders were killed in a single strike? And this person beside me is not a junior martial artist. His name is Lin Yi and he is the legitimate successor of the Kunlun Devil cult. This time he is representing the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao Alliance. Is this identity not enough?" Hearing this, Chou Xiangzi's face revealed a faint smile and said, "He is representing the Holy Maiden of the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao Alliance? Since when did the Shadow Demon sect have a man? This kid can't be that woman's lover, right?" Chapter 375. There were plenty of people with foul mouths everywhere. Chu Xiu wouldn't be angered by a single sentence from the other party. Hearing that, Chu Xiu only transmitted his voice to Mr. Lu in an unusually calm manner. "Who is this?" Mr. Lu sneered, 5 poison sects young master Shanin Chou Xiangzi. He's already so old, not much younger than me, yet he's still pretending to be a young master here. He's been relying on the symbiotic poison goo to maintain his appearance. In the past, he once pursued the Holy Maiden, but with her strength, how could she take a fancy to such trash? Now that the Holy Maiden is in existence at the martial grandmaster level, she's long left this guy behind. Hearing that, Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. He looked at Chou Xiangzi and said indifferently, "My relationship with the Holy Maiden doesn't need a thing that's neither a man nor a woman like you to worry about. I heard that you once pursued the Holy Maiden with a thick face? Please clarify whether you're male or female first." Chu Xiu's words were extremely vicious, directly stabbing Chou Xiangzi's handsome face. "Arrogant junior. You're courting death." Chou Xiangzi fiercely slammed the chair, his figure turning into a stream of light, directly rushing towards Chu Xiu. Before Chu Xiu's arrival, the Bright Demons and Yin Mo had already quarreled several times. However, they did not make a move, but the smell of gunpowder was already very strong. That was why Chou Xiangzi had directly opened his mouth to ridicule Mr. Lu when he first came in. Now that it had escalated to the level of fighting, it was very normal. At the very least, there was no reaction from the Bright Demon lineage and Yin Mo lineage. Mr. Lu snorted coldly and was about to make a move, but he was stopped by Chu Xiu. Among the martial artists present, there were martial grandmaster level experts, and most of the others were Unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists. Although there were also martial artists below Unity of Heaven and Man Realm, they were all junior martial artists responsible for serving tea and water. There really weren't any martial artists like Chu Xiu who came to represent the Yin Demon sect to discuss the alliance meeting. Therefore, everyone wanted to see how good Chu Xiu was, and whether he had the qualifications to represent the Yin Demon sect to participate in this Demon Alliance meeting. Therefore, everyone wanted to see how good Chu Xiu was, and whether he was qualified to represent the Yin Demon sect to participate in this Demon Alliance meeting. Even if Chu Xiu planned on silently joining the Demon Path Alliance meeting as a spectator, he still had to show that he had the qualifications to be a spectator. Moreover, Chu Xiu didn't plan on just being a spectator. At that moment, Chou Xiangzi had already arrived before Chu Xiu. However, in that instant, Chou Xiangzi's figure instantly turned into a ball of rainbow-colored fog, enveloping Chu Xiu within it in an instant. The Five Poisons cult was born in the 10,000 mountains of the Miaojiang. Although it was not as famous as the moon-worshipping cult, it was also a big demonic sect, one of the 8 sects. On the surface, Five Poison sect was born in the Miaojiang's 100,000 mountains. Although it was not as famous as moon-worshipping sect, it was still a big demon sect and was one of the 8 sections. On the surface, it looked like Chou Xiangzi had unleashed a multicolored poisonous mist, but in reality, there were countless tiny poisonous insects within the poisonous mist, making it seem extremely terrifying. Being shrouded in the poisonous fog, Chu Xiu revealed a cold smile. Because he had to hide his identity, most of Chu Xiu's martial skills could not be used directly. Even his signature Sky Demon dance could only be hidden. Therefore, Chu Xiu's fighting strength was suppressed by at least half. Chu Xiu could feel Chou Xiangzi's strength the moment he made a move. He was definitely not weak. Even if he could not compare to Mr. Liu, who was a half-step master, he was stronger than his 7th uncle. However, it was a pity that he encountered Chu Xiu. The glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body had a great restraining effect on poisons, not to mention this kind of poisonous insects. As soon as they got close to Chu Xiu, they were directly suppressed by the glazed gold silk goo's natural superior pressure. They fainted on the ground and were shattered by Chu Xiu's Gang Qi. Chu Xiu activated the devil Qi of the 3 blades of Avicii and combined it with the powerful killing intent of the heaven-extinguishing and earth-destroying oblivion-killing fist. He directly punched out and blasted Chou Xiangzi, who was hidden in the poisonous fog, away. Chou Xiangzi retreated several steps. His hands, which had blocked Chu Xiu's punch, could not help but tremble. He looked at Chu Xiu in horror. There was more than one person in Jianghu who knew the heaven-extinguishing and earth-destroying oblivion-killing fist. Chu Xiu was not worried that he would expose this martial skill. Moreover, he had integrated the unique devil Qi of the 3 blades of Avicii into it. In the eyes of the outside world, as long as he did not use saber techniques, no one would associate Chu Xiu with his current identity. While Chou Xiangzi was still in shock, Chu Xiu had already closed in and punched again. The killing intent shocked the scene, and a cold chill directly shot up to the sky. Everyone present looked at each other with strange eyes. Where did this rising star of the devil Dao named Lin Yi come from? His identity was not simple at all. This powerful killing intent and evil aura was something that ordinary warriors who cultivated step by step would not be able to achieve. How many people did this guy kill to achieve this level of cultivation? However, the crowd did not delve into it, especially the people from the Yinma clan. They were chased by the righteous sects almost every day. It was normal for them to change their identities. Even they did not trust themselves. One could imagine how many fake identities they had to create in order to prevent themselves from being chased by the righteous sections. Now it seemed that Lin Yi was the same. He should be a well-known figure in Jianghu. At this moment, when Chou Xiangzi saw that Chu Xiu, a junior warrior who was inferior to him, actually dared to pursue him relentlessly, his devilishly handsome face became distorted. He stretched out one hand and the 5-colored poisonous gas continuously swirled around his fingers. As his hands danced, the 5-colored threads that filled the sky instantly turned into an inescapable net under the support of his inner force, enveloping Chu Xiu. Each of the 5 poison sects' 5 poison Gang Qi had the power to poison warriors of the same level to death. The most terrifying thing was that the 5 kinds of poisonous gas could be arranged at will, and their attributes were also different. It could be said that the 5 poison Gang Qi cultivated by every warrior of the 5 poison sect was different. The 5 poison silk hand that Chou Xiangzi displayed was his unique secret technique. Apart from using his own Gang Qi to resist it, there was almost no way to break it. As long as one came into contact with a trace of it, the poison would immediately enter the heart meridian. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands, and a strange Gang Qi enveloped his body. Half of it was Buddhist light, and the other half was an incomparably evil and monstrous demonic aura. The Buddhist light and demonic aura combined, forming an evil phantom behind Chu Xiu. It was clearly dignified, but the demonic flames were monstrous. Great Vajra divine powers, Mara Vajra form. Chu Xiu had already started cultivating the great Vajra divine powers while he was recuperating. Now Chu Xiu's great Vajra divine powers was only at the beginner level. Naturally, he was unable to condense his own Dharma form. However, Chu Xiu chose a few Dharma forms that were more suitable for him to imitate and cultivate. Among those who cultivated the great Vajra divine powers, there were Buddhist monks, but there were also Buddhist scum. The Buddhist warrior who cultivated the Mara Vajra form was one of them. He had resentment in his heart, which resulted in him being unable to condense his own Dharma form. Therefore, he directly turned from Buddhism to the demonic. He did not expect that he would successfully cultivate the Mara Vajra form by chance. Chu Xiu also cultivated both Buddhism and demonic. Therefore, after obtaining the Mara Vajra form, he quickly succeeded in cultivating it without any hesitation. As soon as the Mara Vajra form appeared, Chu Xiu stepped forward, allowing the inescapable net condensed by the 5 poison silkan to fall on his body. However, they were all strangled by the Buddhist light and demonic aura. As the palm fell, the demonic flames were monstrous and the Buddhist light was scorching. The two forces mixed together and fell on Chou Xiangzi's head. The power was incomparably powerful, immediately causing everyone in the lobby to look sideways. The power of Chu Xiu's palm was enough to be shocking among the warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm. Although this man was at the 5 chis collecting in the origin realm, his strength was already comparable to the unity of heaven and man realm. At least, there were not many people present who were confident that they could defeat Chu Xiu. The way Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu was also very strange. Only a short period of time had passed, and Chu Xiu had already grown to such a realm. Could it be that the heavens were really blessing the sacred sect, and that the younger generation had also produced such an astonishing and supreme powerhouse? The Buddhist lineage had Wisdom King Zhong Xian, the Dao lineage had Little Celestial Master Zhang Qingzhen, and the sword lineage also had Chief Sword Fang Qishao. Now the Devil Dao lineage had produced Chu Xiu. Although he could only hide his identity now if there were no problems with Chu Xiu's future development, Mr. Lu believed that Chu Xiu would definitely grow to be an existence that could rival the 3 of them. At this moment in the arena, facing Chu Xiu's Buddhist light mixed with demonic aura, Chou Xiangzi threw out a strange ice silkworm from his sleeve. The violent 5 poison gang chi was injected into the ice silkworm, and in an instant the ice silkworm expanded by a size. It spat out endless cold air, which turned into countless ice crystals in front of Chou Xiangzi. This was the mystical ice goo that Chou Xiangzi had refined in the far north wastelands. For this, he had even fought with the people of the far north fluttering snow city. The mystical ice goo could transform any power into the power of mystical ice. Once the mystical ice goo entered one's body, it would immediately freeze the person's meridians and true chi. It was extremely terrifying, but now it could only be used for defense. However, Chu Xiu's Mara Vajra form was powerful and heavy. The great Vajra divine strength was supported by the power of the Dharma form, and it was definitely a top-notch body tempering technique. As the palm fell, cracks appeared on the large area of ice crystals. The Buddhist light and demonic aura exploded, and in an instant, all the ice crystals shattered. The mystical ice goo also exploded. Chou Xiangzi roared angrily. That was the mystical ice goo that he had spent several years to refine. However, before Chou Xiangzi could react, Chu Xiu had already formed a seal with both hands, and the Mara Vajra form behind him was replaced by the dignified Dharma Guardian Wisdom King. As the fist fell, the Buddhist light instantly shone brightly, suppressing evil and slaying demons. Hell-suppressing Wisdom King form. Amidst the explosion of the Buddhist light, Chou Xiangzi was blasted back several steps, and a stream of blood flowed from his mouth. What was even more bizarre was that his face was constantly twisting, as if there were countless goo worms swimming under his skin. In an instant, his appearance actually aged by several decades, from a young man in his 20s to an old man in his 60s or 70s. He looked even older than Mr. Lu. Pointing at Chu Xiu, Chou Xiangzi roared, "Buddhist technique. He's a spy sent by the Buddhist sects." Chapter 376. Chou Xiangzi used his wide sleeves to cover his face. He looked at Chu Xiu with a gaze filled with venomous hatred. He didn't hate Chu Xiu for defeating him, but he hated Chu Xiu for using a Buddhist technique to shake up the poisonous insects in his body, making it impossible for him to maintain his youthful appearance. Chou Xiangzi valued his face immensely. Destroying his face was more painful than killing him. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Those who practice Buddhist techniques are spies of Buddhism. If I practice poison techniques, would I still be a member of your 5 poison sect?" Mr. Lu also sneered and said, I've also practiced Taoism's Tai Chi Yin Yang sword. Does that mean I'm also a member of Taoism? You bright demons can walk the Jianghu without worry. If we hidden demons aren't careful, I'm afraid we'd have been eliminated by those righteous Tao long ago. A hint of anger appeared in Chou Xiangzi's eyes. He wanted to say something, but at this moment, a monk in black who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground and meditating with his eyes closed suddenly said, All right, we've already fought. Let's not talk about spies and whatnot. Using merit to determine the enemy is what those righteous Tao sects do. The sixth demon sect also practices both Buddhism and demonic Tao. Could it be that the sixth demon sect is also a Buddhist spy? The monk in black who spoke had the appearance of a middle-aged man. The black robe he wore looked like a kasaya, but at the same time it didn't. There were all sorts of messy things like hell, lust, demons, and the Western paradise painted on it with golden patterns, making it look extremely evil. He had been fiddling with a string of prayer beads in his hand. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a skull carved from white bones. However, it emitted a jade-like luster, making it look a little strange. Although this black-robed monk had the appearance of a bald monk with a ring scar, no one would think that he was a benevolent Buddhist monk based on his attire. His aura was restrained, but he did not do it on purpose. Judging from the aura he exuded, one could tell that this monk was a martial Tao Grand Master and was not someone to be trifled with. Mr. Lu said to Chu Xiu through telepathy, He is the martial arts master of the sixth demon sect, Siddhartha Me. He is in charge of the sky of lust, one of the 6 great celestial realms of the sixth demon sect. He can trigger inner demons and kill people invisibly. He looks like an ordinary person, but he is an extremely difficult character to deal with. Chu Xiu nodded. He had naturally heard of the sixth demon sect. Its strength was definitely not weak. However, the sixth demon sect was located far away from the central plains in the Hainan Sea region. Therefore, its reputation was relatively small. The sixth demon sect cultivates both demons and Buddhists, but in reality they cultivate evil demonic techniques that counter Buddhists. The sixth demon sect worshipped the demon king of the sixth heaven, who was also known as Devil Luo Bushuan. His techniques leaned towards the spiritual aspect, and in particular, it could trigger the opponent's inner demons, causing them to go berserk and even cripple their cultivation. It was extremely evil and ruthless. Moreover, the martial arts of the sixth heavenly demon sect had a great restraining effect on Buddhist cultivators. Buddhist cultivators placed great emphasis on the cultivation of their mental state. Once their inner demons were aroused, their cultivation would be crippled. Even their Buddhist cultivation would be destroyed, and they would directly fall into the path of demons. Therefore, the sixth demon sect was located far away from the central plains and kept a low profile. Otherwise, they would have been annihilated by the joint forces of the Great Light Temple and the Subodhi Monastery. This time, the sixth demon sect acted as the middleman to mediate the conflict between the bright demons and the hidden demons. It was fine for both sides to have conflicts and fight to vent their anger, but it was impossible for them to really get into a fight. Looking at the people around him, Siddhari said calmly, The people from the Omniscient sect and the Rakshasa sect haven't arrived yet. Everyone take a break. It won't be too late to argue when they're here. Otherwise, if we end up fighting each other before we even see those from the Orthodox Tao, wouldn't that be a joke? When the martial arts grandmaster spoke, Chou Xiangzi could only glare at Chu Xiu hatefully and obediently return to his seat. At that moment, Chu Xiu also came to a realization. No wonder there were so few martial arts grandmasters in the hall. It turned out that they were afraid that they would not be able to restrain themselves if they fought. Actually, apart from the independent cultivators, the factions that were qualified to participate in the Demon Tao Conference this time all had a martial arts grandmaster behind them. However, not all of them could come. This was because if they all came, it would be as Siddhari said, and they ended up quarreling. When both sides fought, it would be very easy for them to end up badly injured. That would not be easy to clean up. Therefore, the representatives from both sides were only martial artists at the unity of heaven and man realm. Martial artists at this level were already the backbone of the major factions and had the right to represent their respective sects, just like Mr. Lu and Chou Xiangzi from before. There were only 3 martial arts grandmasters in the entire hall. 1 each from the bright demons, the hidden demons, and the sixth demon sect. One of them was the host and mediator, Siddhari. On the bright demons side, there was also a middle-aged martial artist in a loose black robe with a shady expression. However, Chu Xiu did not know which sect he was from. When Chu Xiu fought with Chou Xiangzi just now, he did not speak and his expression did not even change at all. Clearly he was not from the Five Poisons sect. On the other hand, the martial arts grandmaster from the hidden demon's side was very strange. He was actually a slightly sloppy old man in a loose gray robe. From the moment Chu Xiu came in, he had been leaning on the chair with his eyes squinted as if he had not woken up yet, as if he did not care about anything at all. Seeing that things had come to an end, Mr. Lu pulled Chu Xiu over to the old man and bowed respectfully. Senior Wei, this is the martial artist Lin Yi, who is representing the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao conference. He is a rising star of our Demon Dao, and his strength is extraordinary. Even the Saintess has praised him. As he spoke, Mr. Lu hurriedly said to Chu Xiu, this is a senior of our Demon Dao, one of the 5 great sky demons of the 9th sky mountain, jade-faced sky demon Wei Shuya. Chu Xiu bowed to Wei Shuya, but he could not help but reveal a hint of surprise in his eyes. Speaking of Wei Shuya, Chu Xiu probably could not remember who he was, but the 5 great sky demons of the 9th sky mountain were still very famous. 200 years ago, in the 9th sky mountain of eastern Qi, 5 experts of Demon Dao joined hands and raised a big flag, calling on all the Demon Dao in the world to return to the Kunlun Devil cult and restore the Demon Dao to its former glory. These 5 people were all martial arts grandmasters, and together they were called the 5 great sky demons. For a while, all the rogue cultivators, Demon Dao martial artists, and some sects of the hidden demon sect responded, and their momentum was incomparably great. It actually had the momentum of the Demon Dao. Unfortunately, there was still a huge gap between the righteous Dao and the Demon Dao. Under the cooperation of several big sects of the righteous Dao, 4 of the 5 sky demons of the 9th sky mountain were killed, and the so-called Demon Dao alliance completely fell apart. That was also the last grand occasion of the Demon Dao. Since then, for 200 years, the Demon Dao had been keeping a low profile. For example, during the God Weapon Conference, the phaseless demon sect's attack was considered to be on a relatively large scale. This jade-faced sky demon, Wei Shuya, was the only survivor of the 5 sky demons of the 9th sky mountain. However, his lifespan was approaching 300 years, and he was almost at the end of his life. Therefore, there were rumors in the Jianghu that Wei Shuya was already dead. Unexpectedly, he was still alive, but his appearance was somewhat different from what Chu Xiu had imagined. Wei Shuya used to be called Jade-Faced Sky Demon. He was extremely handsome and elegant, and he did not look like a murderer of the Demon Dao at all. He was clearly a gentleman of the Jianghu. It was said that in the past, Wei Shuya had a romantic past with the Taoist nun of the Zhenwu sect, the legitimate daughter of the 9 great families, and the sword fairy of the Yunyu palace. However, no one except Wei Shuya knew whether it was a Jianghu rumor or a real thing. Wei Shuya waved his hand lazily and said, "What jade-faced sky demon? The wrinkles on this old man's face are enough to kill a fly." "Jade-face? Little baby boy, you're quite good. Since you were chosen by that plum blossom, you definitely wouldn't be wrong. That girl was extremely proud and arrogant. If there wasn't a suitable candidate, she would rather not participate in this demonic path alliance meeting. Go back and save your strength. In a while you'll have to fight with those people on the other side. But you don't have to be afraid. This old man is going to die soon. Whether they want to play dirty or not, I'll play with them." Wei Shuya did not hide his words. He said it in front of the bright demon lineage. It was obvious that he was referring to them. On the side of the bright demon lineage, the warrior shrouded in a black robe snorted coldly, but he did not say anything. He pulled Chu Xiu to the side and sat down. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Who's that martial arts grandmaster from the bright demon lineage?" Mr. Lu said expressionlessly, "His background is not simple. He's Mountain Ghost, one of the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult. You should have heard of him." Chu Xiu nodded and a strange look appeared in his eyes. Of course he knew this name. This was a big shot. The Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult's power was so great that it had almost become the #1 sect in the Demon Dao. Even when the Kunlun Devil cult's demonic power swallowed the heavens and suppressed the entire Jianghu, the moon-worshipping cult only chose to follow, and not submit. Therefore, after the Kunlun Devil cult was destroyed, the moon-worshipping cult managed to escape in time and was not implicated. Moreover, the moon-worshipping cult had countless powerhouses. On the surface, there were already more than 10 martial arts grandmasters, which could be compared to the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master Mansion of Longhu Mountain. The top 3 powerhouses of the moon-worshipping cult were the sect leader, the high priest, and the witch. The witch's status was similar to that of Mei Qinglian's Yin demon sect saintess, second only to the sect leader. Other than these 3, the strongest ones in the moon-worshipping cult were the 9 god Magisprius. They were named after the 9 ghost gods in the legends of the ancient Miaojiang. They were the East Emperor Tai, Lord Yun Zhongjuan, Great Lord Si Ming, Young Lord Si Ming, Lord Xiang, Lady Xiang, Lord Dong, River Earl, and Mountain Ghost. These 9 were the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult. Names were no longer important to them. From the moment they inherited the title of god magi, they were called by this name. Mountain Ghost could only be ranked last among the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult, but he was still qualified to represent the moon-worshipping cult in the Demon Dao Conference. One could imagine the overall strength of the moon-worshipping cult. Chapter 377. Chu Xiu sat with Mr. Lu and waited. He was also observing the demonic Dao warriors in the hall. Compared to the Bright Demon Clan, the Hidden Demon Clan was indeed much shabbier. There were very few big forces like the Phaseless Demon Sect. Most of them were small forces of 2s and 3s. Although their high-end forces were not weak, they could not be gathered to a large scale. Thus, Mr. Lu did not give Chu Xiu too much of an introduction. However, this did not mean that the Hidden Demon Clan was weak. The Hidden Demon Clan was called the Hidden Demon Clan when they hid in the dark. Before they truly surfaced, who knew how strong the Hidden Demon Clan was? Take Chu Xiu for example. Although he was the successor of the demonic Dao, his original identity was not weak. The Hidden Demon Clan members present were the same. Perhaps they had some status in the Jianghu. And the most important thing was that there were many old monsters like Wuxia who dared to fight against the righteous sects in the Hidden Devil Clan. Who knew whether those famous diabolism tycoons were dead or still hiding in the dark? The crowd waited for less than an hour. At this time, the people from the Rakshasa sect and the Omniscient sect also arrived. The Rakshasa sect was located in the far west desert, close to the western region. All the disciples of the Rakshasa sect wore a mask of a demon. Legend had it that because of their cultivation method, their appearance was like a demon. There was no difference between wearing a mask and not wearing one. However, the people from the Omniscient sect were a little strange. There were 2 people from the Omniscient sect. One was at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, and the other was at the 5 Chi's origin realm. Normally, if there were martial artists at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm among the people who came, the former would definitely be the leader. However, the people from the Omniscient sect seemed to be the opposite. They actually respected the young man at the 5 Chi's origin realm. When they entered, the young man walked in front. There was only 1 seat for each force. The young man directly sat on the seat of the Omniscient sect. The martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm stood to the side like a follower. Seeing this, everyone present frowned and looked at the young man from the Omniscient sect. The young man had a masculine and handsome appearance. He wore a loose black robe, and one could vaguely see a ferocious blood-red dragon tattoo on his chest. He also held a blood-red dragon spear in his hand, looking incomparably ferocious. A martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm would be considered an expert no matter where he went. He was the backbone of a force. Even if the Xiahou clan was one of the 9 great clans, and the 7th uncle was just a guest of the Xiahou clan, Xiahou Wujiang still had to obediently address the 7th uncle as an elder and be very polite to him. But now, this young man from the extreme evil sect was treating a cultivator at the one with the world stage as a follower. Wasn't this a little too unruly? Who was this kid? Could he be the son of the sect master of the extreme evil sect? Someone from the hidden devil lineage immediately mocked, "Your extreme evil sect is getting worse and worse. You don't even know the difference between superiors and inferiors. You have a martial artist at the one with the heaven stage, but you've sent a martial artist at the 5 Chi's returning to the origin stage to sit there. What, do you think this demonic Dao conference is a game?" Mr. Lu transmitted his voice to Chu Xiu's ear. This person is Jiaringzong, the disciple of the Scarlet Drill Demonic Sect master. The Scarlet Drill Demonic Sect was a large sect in the Hidden Devil lineage in the early years, but now it has been suppressed beyond recognition. I estimate that there are only 100 people in the entire sect. Before the person from the extreme evil sect could speak, Zhou Xiangzi sneered and said, "If that kid from your Hidden Devil lineage can sit there with the 5 Chi's returning to the origin stage, why can't my Bright Devil lineage do the same?" Although Zhou Xiangzi had suffered a loss at the hands of Chu Xiu, it wasn't a serious injury. He had already recovered, and his appearance had also returned to his previous handsome and devilish appearance. Jiaringzong sneered and said, "Zhou Xiangzi, you still have the nerve to speak? So what if it's the 5 Chi's returning to the origin stage? Who was the one who was humiliated by little brother Lin Yi just now? If you have the nerve to sit here, he naturally has the right to do so as well. However, what right does this kid from the extreme evil sect have? The extreme evil sect wasn't very strong among the bright devil lineage. Moreover, they had really relied on admitting defeat to the orthodox sects in exchange for a chance of survival. This kind of humiliation couldn't be washed away no matter how hard they tried. Therefore, even among the bright devil lineage, the extreme evil sect didn't have a good reputation and was always ridiculed. According to Jiangzong's knowledge, the extreme evil sect didn't have a single outstanding person in recent years. Previously, the extreme evil sect seemed to have recruited a new devil cultivator, Tong Kai Tai. That guy was inexperienced and didn't understand the situation, so he really joined the extreme evil sect. In the end, not long after he jumped out, he was slaughtered by Chu Xiu of the Guanzhong torture room. This caused the other devil sects to secretly ridicule the extreme evil sect. They mocked the extreme evil sect for being unable to nurture a young expert. It wasn't easy for them to recruit one, but it was a short-lived ghost. This was why Jiangzong was so presumptuous in ridiculing the extreme evil sect now. Of course, the deeper reason was that the Scarlet Drill Demon sect had an old grudge with the extreme evil sect. The grudge between the Bright Devil lineage and the Hidden Devil lineage was no less than that of the Orthodox sections. This time, if it wasn't for the Sixth Demon sect acting as a middleman, they would probably have to fight it out first to determine the outcome. The Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artist from the extreme evil sect revealed a trace of anger on his face. Just as he was about to make a move, the young man had already stood up lazily. Holding the blood-colored dragon spear in his hand, he said plainly, "You asked me why I'm sitting here? I'm not good with words and it's too troublesome to explain. The blood dragon in my hand will tell you the answer." "Alright, I'm not that kid, I'm Yi Tianxia. Extreme evil sect's Yi Tianxia." Jiangzong sneered disdainfully and said, "Never heard of you." Yi Tianxia dragged the blood-colored dragon spear on the ground. His eyes strangely turned vertical and the color of his eyes turned scarlet like some kind of snake. "You will remember this in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Tianxia's figure turned into a blood-colored ray of light and attacked Jiangzong. The dragon on the blood-colored dragon spear roared, and in an instant the dragon's aura shook the sky. Jiangzong brandished the scarlet long saber in his hand, and the blood-red light condensed into a towering saber light that slashed horizontally. A similarly powerful aura erupted, and it was incomparably sharp. There were also traces of black qi within it, which was the poisonous corpse qi. The martial arts of the Scarlet Drill Demon sect mainly focused on condensing the incomparably ferocious blood qi and the strange corpse qi to attack the enemy. His power was not weak at all. However, Yi Tianxia's spear did not seem to be special in any way. The only special thing was that the power of his spear was really strong, and it was not weaker than the power of a Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artist. He had the right to sit there. However, the moment Yi Tianxia struck with his spear, Wei Shuya, who was originally sleepy, suddenly opened his eyes. A frightening ray of light appeared in his old and muddy eyes. With a loud bang, the scarlet spear radiance collided with the scarlet saber radiance, causing a violent shockwave to erupt. Something unexpected happened. Jiangzong's saber radiance was shattered, completely suppressed by Yi Tianxia in terms of power. The scarlet dragon spear in Yi Tianxia's hand smashed down like a heavy hammer. The powerful aura was like Mount Tai, and it directly hit Jiangzong, causing him to vomit blood and retreat. The ground under his feet cracked inch by inch. At this moment, everyone finally understood that there was indeed nothing special about Yi Tianxia's martial arts. The only thing special about him was his power. God knows how he, a martial artist at the Five Chi's origin realm, managed to cultivate to this level of power. Even among the Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists, there were not many who could be on par with him. Yi Tianxia had no intention of stopping after making Jiangzong vomit blood in just 2 moves. The blood dragon in his hand flew out, and the long spear seemed to have come to life. It twisted and danced in the air, and it really looked like a dragon that was about to devour someone. It stabbed toward Jiangzong. Jiangzong roared, and the long saber in his hand suddenly disintegrated. Countless scarlet saber light merged into it, and the saber slashed down, and Yi Tianxia's spear missed its target. However, whether it was a coincidence or on purpose, the moment the long spear missed its target, a scarlet gang qi suddenly erupted, and it actually went straight for Chu Xiu. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. This Yi Tianxia of the omniscient sect was really arrogant to the extreme. If Jiangzong was not enough to establish his dominance, did he want to use me as well? At that moment, Chu Xiu's eyes burst with a bright light, and he displayed the heaven sun gazing at air technique. The trajectory of the spear was clearly visible in Chu Xiu's eyes. When the blood dragon spear was about to reach him, Chu Xiu took a step forward, and his figure casually dodged the spear. His palm turned into a saber, and the surging devil chi condensed in Chu Xiu's palm. He directly slashed down with the saber, and the spear was directly sent flying back toward Yi Tianxia. Everyone present could even hear the howling of a beast coming from the long spear. The gang chi in Yi Tianxia's hand exploded, and he caught the spear that Chu Xiu had slashed back at him. When they collided, there was a violent explosion of gang chi. Although Yi Tianxia did not take a step back, one could imagine how strong Chu Xiu was. Looking at Chu Xiu, Yi Tianxia raised his eyebrows. It seemed that someone had already established his dominance before coming here, and his strength was not weak at all. At this time, Wuxia half opened his eyes and said slowly, "You actually refined the Flood Dragon's inner core of the Omniscient sect? It seems that you have also learned the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra? Impressive. The Omniscient sect has been thinking about this for hundreds of years, and it has actually succeeded in your generation. The young people of the Yinma clan are not weak, and it seems that the Bright Demon clan is not weak either. You have established your dominance, go back and sit down. The fight is over and it's time to get down to business." Chapter 378. Wuxia immediately revealed Yi Tianxia's origins. This caused the expressions of Yi Tianxia and the unity of the Heaven Realm martial artist from the extreme evil sect to change, but they quickly returned to normal. Their so-called little secrets were not worth mentioning in the eyes of an old antique like Wuxia, and he could easily see through them. Everyone present thought for a moment and immediately understood what was going on. The extreme evil sect had not been very strong since its founding, and their cultivation methods were also relatively mediocre. However, a few hundred years ago, the extreme evil sect had accidentally obtained an opportunity. They had dug up the tomb of an ancient powerhouse. However, the commotion at that time had been too great. The Omniscient sect had dug up the tomb, but the Omniscient sect hadn't been able to get anything good out of it. The truly valuable things had all been snatched away by others who had heard the news. The extreme evil sect only obtained two things from that time. One was a blood serpent's core, and the other was the blood serpent's cultivation method, the Blood Serpent Heart Sutra. That's right, it was not a cultivation method for humans, but a cultivation method specifically for vicious beasts to cultivate. This ancient powerhouse was extremely powerful, and he actually kept a blood serpent as a pet. After the blood serpent died, it only left behind a core. Originally, it was possible to refine a vicious beast's core, but the extreme evil sect was not good at alchemy, let alone a high-grade item like the blood serpent's core. They did not feel at ease giving it to others. Therefore, the extreme evil sect master of that generation suddenly had the idea to let his disciples swallow the blood serpent's core. After refining it, they would obtain the bloodline of a flood dragon, and then cultivate the Blood Serpent Heart Sutra. Wouldn't that create a supreme powerhouse? In the end, imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. The blood serpent's core was extremely domineering, and it was not something that ordinary people could refine. As for the Blood Serpent Heart Sutra, it was even more so. The meridians of humans were different from vicious beasts, so they specifically researched a cultivation method that was suitable for vicious beasts to cultivate. Conversely, it was impossible for humans to cultivate a cultivation method that was suitable for vicious beasts. After paying with the lives of over 10 young extreme evil sect warriors, the extreme evil sect finally realized how unreliable this matter was. They temporarily put the plan aside and no longer cared about it. Back then, this matter had been laughed at by the martial artists of the Jianghu. They thought that the extreme evil sect was so poor that they had gone crazy and wanted to make humans cultivate a cultivation method for vicious beasts. Who would have thought that the extreme evil sect would actually succeed? Apart from everything else, Yi Tianxia's strength was already extremely terrifying. Not to mention the 5 Qis collecting in origin state, there were probably only a few warriors in the oneness of heaven and men state who could be on par with him. After all, it was the power of the Flood Dragon. In terms of physical strength, the only one who could really go head-to-head with Yi Tianxia was Wisdom King Zhongxian. Now that everyone had arrived, Siddhartha, who had been sitting in the middle without moving, stood up. He looked at the people on both sides and said in a deep voice with a slight Hainan accent, "Everyone, now that everyone is here, it's time to discuss how to organize the World Sword Sect meeting. This is an open scheme from the 5 great sword sects. At present, the experts from the 5 great sword sects must have gathered on Floating Jade Mountain. They must be waiting for us in formation. We still need to come up with a plan as to how we should handle this matter. Wei Shuya raised his eyelids and said lightly, "The people of the 5 great sword sects bully our demonic path and want to trample on our demonic path's face. What else can we do?" One word, fight. Someone beside him reminded him softly, "Senior Wei, those are 2 words. Wei Shuya rolled his eyes at the other party and released an oppressive aura. The aura of the senile Wei Shuya suddenly became like that of an evil dragon that had just woken up. It was incomparably frightening. The cultivator immediately shrank back and did not dare to say anything else. Moon-worshipping cult's god shaman Mountain Ghost also nodded expressionlessly. "There's no need to say more about this. We have to fight, but how should we fight? Aren't we just courting death by charging forward stupidly like this?" Cho Xiangzi immediately echoed, "Moon-worshipping cult is now the #1 demonic path sect. The cult master's heaven-mending heart sutra has been cultivated to great success. The high priest's illusory demon blood curse can even kill martial arts grandmasters of the same level. It's only appropriate for moon-worshipping cult to lead our demonic path to attack floating Jade Mountain." The 5 Venoms cult and moon-worshipping cult were both located in Miaojiang of West Chu. Both sides were from the bright demon lineage. It could be said that the 5 Venoms cult respected moon-worshipping cult from the very beginning. It was normal for them to support moon-worshipping cult at a time like this. The other bright demons also expressed their agreement. It was not that they were willing to respect moon-worshipping cult, but for the entire bright demon lineage, it was enough as long as they could take the lead. Mr. Liu sneered, "It's not like we have to listen to whoever is stronger. Moon-worshipping cult is strong. Fine, we won't do anything. We'll just watch moon-worshipping cult deal with the 5 great sword sections. Isn't that more appropriate?" Cho Xiangzi slammed the table and shouted coldly, "Lu Jin, stop bickering. This matter concerns the reputation of our entire demonic path. Stop pestering us endlessly." Mr. Liu retorted, "I'm endlessly pestering you? I'm afraid that someone will abuse their authority for personal gain." As the 2 quarreled, the rest of the bright demons and hidden demons also began to quarrel with each other. For the bright demons, their combined strength was much stronger than Mr. Liu and the others. Since that was the case, it was only right for them to be in command of the attack on floating Jade Mountain. It would be wrong if it was the other way around. As for the warriors of the Hidden Devil clan, they were not at ease to hand over the command to the Bright Devil clan. In the eyes of the hidden demons, the bright demons were traitors. Now that they were handed over to them, would these people still betray them? No one could say for sure. More importantly, who would be in command was a matter of status and face. No one was willing to accept it, so the matter was in a deadlock. No one could do anything to the other. Seeing the 2 sides quarreling, Mountain Ghost of Moon-worshipping cult waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Stop quarreling. If this goes on, I'm afraid we won't be able to come to a conclusion by the time the World Sword Sect Conference begins. Wei Shuya, the strength of your hidden demons is right there. If you don't let my moon-worshipping cult command this matter, do you want the entire bright demons to listen to you? I know what you're worried about. The past is the past. The destruction of the Kunlun Devil cult was not caused by us. Dugu Weiwei is dead and the Kunlun Devil cult is on the verge of collapse. Do we have to be buried with him and the destruction of the entire demonic path to be worthy of the demonic path? This time the 5 major sword sects are provoking the entire demonic path. Whether it's my moon-worshipping cult or the entire bright demons, no one will dare to play tricks at this time. You can rest assured." Wei Shuya raised his eyes and looked at Mountain Ghost. He said lightly, "It's fine if you call my name directly, but do you have the right to call Lord Demon Lord's name? Moon-worshipping cult is really getting worse with each generation. With your conduct, do you really think you're the #1 demonic path sect? I know 2 people who inherited the title of Mountain Ghost from your moon-worshipping cult. The first one was blasted into charcoal by the Celestial Master Mansion's Zhang family with thunder because of his foul mouth. The second one's head was smashed by the monks of the Great Light Temple when they were fighting over some goo insect. Those who inherited the title of Mountain Ghost don't live long. If you continue to be so unruly with your mouth, you might not be able to live longer than your 2 seniors." Hearing this, Mountain Ghost's eyes revealed a hint of anger. He said with a gloomy face, "Wei Shuya, don't flaunt your seniority here. In the past, the 5 people of your 9 heavenly mountain raised their flags and courted death. Not only did they die, but they also implicated a group of demonic path martial artists. What seniority do you have to act in front of me?" Wei Shuya's seemingly old body slowly stood up. The aura around him was like that of a sleeping lion that had just woken up. His aura was extremely terrifying and he was simply suppressed to the extreme. Sadari wanted to say something, but just as he opened his mouth, he shut it again. He stood to the side as if it had nothing to do with him. Mountain Ghost snorted coldly. Wasn't he going to make a move in the end? He had actually been mentally prepared before he came. Jade Face Heavenly Demon Wuxia was indeed famous. Although Mountain Ghost kept saying that the 5 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountain were courting death, in reality, the 5 of them had really gathered countless demonic path experts with a wave of their arms. It also made the righteous path martial arts world see the power of the demonic path. They were not existences that could be easily provoked. It was better to think carefully before shouting the slogan of exterminating demons and defending the righteous path. From then on, the righteous path's killing of the demonic path had indeed slowed down a lot. Although 4 of the 5 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountain had been killed, the righteous path's martial arts world had also paid a price. No one wanted to force out the 5 heavenly demons again. However, no matter how famous they were, that was more than 200 years ago. In the martial arts world, one should not listen to someone who was older. This was the habit of the righteous path sections. In the demonic path, of course, the one with the bigger fist would listen to the one with the bigger fist. Now, Wuxia was just an old man whose chi and blood had already declined. The moon-worshipping cult's fist was the biggest. The hill ghost's figure suddenly turned into a black mist that lingered around the entire hall. His figure was like a ghost, completely fusing into the mist. Even Siddhartha was unable to detect the hill ghost's tracks. Each of the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult had their own cultivation method inheritance. It was naturally the same for Mountain Ghost. Within the black fog, the faint wails and howls of evil spirits could be heard. It was as if thousands of evil spirits were imprisoned in it. It was extremely terrifying. The black fog shrank and a deep ghostly aura suddenly erupted, crushing towards Wuxia. However, Wuxia, who was in the black fog, did not change his expression. He only made one move. He stretched out his right hand and slapped in a certain direction. Boundless devil chi surged out of his body and turned into a palm print that was over 100 feet in size. With a single slap, the mountain ghost was sent flying out of the thick ghost fog. The mountain ghost was directly smashed into the ground, creating a human-shaped hole. Chapter 379. Those who could participate in the Demonic Alliance meeting were the core forces of the major sections. Some like Mr. Liu had even taken half a step into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Therefore they had naturally seen real Martial Dao Grandmasters fighting before. However, the exchange between Mountain Ghost and Wuxia did not seem like a battle between Martial Dao Grandmasters at all. It was a one-sided suppression. Looking at Mountain Ghost, who was vomiting blood in the pit and looked wretched, everyone could not react in time. Mountain Ghost, one of the 9 divine Magispriests, was incredibly powerful when he launched his attack. However, he was slapped by Wuxia, who looked like an old man and even made him vomit blood. The contrast was way too big. Mountain Ghost clutched his chest in shame and indignation, but at the same time, his eyes flickered with deep horror. This old man was no longer at the Martial Dao True Pellet realm, but had stepped into the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm. It was not easy to condense the True Pellet, but it was even more difficult to step into the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm. Most of the martial artists in the pugilistic world would not think that they had reached perfection after stepping into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Instead, they would work harder to cultivate because they knew that the road ahead was longer. Due to reverence, they wanted to cross another realm. However, in reality, there was almost no one among the 10 Martial Dao Grandmasters who could step into the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm. Wuxia was an old man and his lifespan was almost depleted. How could he step into the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm? At this moment, Mountain Ghost was cursing the hidden demons for being shameless. If they had known that Wuxia was in the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm, their moon-worshipping cult would have sent the strongest among the 9 great magi, East Emperor Tai or the High Priest. Siddhartha, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Do the 2 of you really want to turn the Demonic Alliance meeting into a battlefield for internal strife? Since that's the case, let's not discuss attacking Floating Jade Mountain. Let's have an internal strife first. Wuxia said indifferently, I don't want to fight with anyone either, but someone has a foul mouth and deserves to be beaten up. Now, some of the martial artists of my devil path seem to have forgotten their own identities and dare to say anything. There is no longer any awe in their hearts. The Kunlun devil cult is indeed unable to represent the devil Dao, but it can still let the disciples of the devil Dao know the glory of the past. Why don't you take a look? When have the disciples of the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery ever slandered the ancient Buddhist sect's sage Bodhidharma? Who in the Dao sect would dare to slander perfected Lu Chunyang? With your current strength, how dare you look down on the Kunlun devil cult? Wait until you have the strength of the Kunlun devil cult first. Mountain Ghost was furious, but he didn't dare to say anything else. Even though he knew he was no match for the enemy, he still insisted on arguing. That was courting death. Siddhartha put his palms together and sighed. Senior Wei, now that we're facing a great enemy, can't we put aside the grudges between the bright demons and the lurking demons for now? Wei Shuya didn't even look up. He said directly, of course we can put aside our grudges for now. However, judging from the attitude of the moon-worshipping cult, they clearly don't have any sincerity. Our lurking demons aren't idiots. We won't agree to anything that goes too far. Siddhartha frowned as well. It seemed like the matter was really going to be stuck here. The lurking demons didn't want to back down, and the bright demons were powerful to begin with. It was even more impossible for them to back down. As such, how could the matter continue? At this moment, Chu Xiu, who had been sitting quietly at the side, suddenly spoke up. Since we can't work together, then we might as well not listen to each other and do our own things. Can't we? Everyone subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Zhou Xiangzi sneered. Do you think you have the right to speak here? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Even you have the nerve to spout nonsense here. Why can't I? I'm here on behalf of the Shadow Demon cult. If you think I don't have the right to speak, then do you think the Shadow Demon cult doesn't have the right to speak as well? Very well, I'll pass on these words to the Saintess when I return. Zhou Xiangzi snorted. He wanted to say something, but he forcefully swallowed it back down. Although the Shadow Demon cult only had that woman left, she was famous for being not to be trifled with. At the very least, the Five Poison cult didn't want to provoke her. If it were anyone else, this kind of quarrel would be easily brushed aside, and neither side would take it seriously. However, the same could not be said for that woman. After all, she was famous for being temperamental and petty. Chu Xiu smiled. He realized that Mei Qinglian seemed to have quite a reputation in the demonic lineage. Senior demonic martial artists like Wei Shuya knew her, and Mei Qinglian's reputation was enough to scare a demonic sect like the Five Poison cult, which wasn't very strong. Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look in his eyes. Do our own things? Tell me your opinion. Chu Xiu spread his hands. My opinion is very simple. Since we can't work together now, why should the Bright Demon cult and the Hidden Demon cult forcefully join forces? In any case, everyone's goal is the same. They all want to make trouble for the Five Sword sects. As long as the goal is achieved, the result is not important. Your Bright Demon cult thinks that you are strong so you can attack Floating Jade Mountain during the World Sword Sect conference. On the other hand, my Yinma lineage is already used to hiding in the dark. This time around, the World Sword Sect conference has invited so many people, it is not difficult for our Yinma lineage to sneak in. With this kind of blossoming inside and outside and attacking together, there does not seem to be any conflict. Chu Xiu's idea was not good, but it was definitely not bad. At least for the people on both sides, especially those from the Hidden Demon cult, they felt that it was not bad. Within the Hidden Devil clan, most of the people were actually used to acting alone. Even if they were not alone, they would rarely gather together in large numbers to attract attention. Like the Phaseless Demon sect, the Hidden Devil clan that could maintain such a large scale was definitely one of the few. The Phaseless Demon sect was able to do this not because they were the strongest in the Hidden Demon cult, but because the Phaseless Demon sect's cultivation method was indeed top-notch in terms of hiding their aura and changing their appearance. So instead of being on tenterhooks and suspecting that they would join forces with the Bright Demon cult, they might as well act alone. In any case, the result would be the same for them. Wei Shuya laughed and said, "This kid is right. Since the two sides can't come to an agreement, then let's not talk and fight on our own." Sidari frowned and said, "But won't there be any problems if no one mediates?" Wei Shuya said indifferently, "But who has the right to mediate? Ever since the cult leader of the Hidden Demon cult disappeared, no one has the right to lead the entire Hidden Demon cult. Our Hidden Demon cult doesn't have such a person, and the moon-worshipping cult doesn't have one either. Someone is giving out random commands and is actually holding us back. We might as well make a bunch of demons dance around. Just like what that little kid said, the result will be the same anyway." Hearing this, Sidari turned his gaze towards the Bright Demon cult. As long as they agreed, the matter would be settled. Mountain Ghost snorted and said, "Since you don't want to take the big picture into consideration, what else can I say? But don't regret it if something unexpected happens." With that, Mountain Ghost turned and left. But from his attitude, it was clear that he had tacitly agreed to this matter. After the other bright demon cult members left, Wuxia walked over and patted Chu Xiu's shoulder. "You're not bad, kid. Our demon cult finally has a successor." After saying that, Wuxia took a step forward and left the hall. At this moment, the hidden demon cult's warriors in the hall all looked at Chu Xiu with envy and jealousy. To be valued by Wuxia and even say such words in front of everyone, this kid's future in the demon cult could be said to be limitless. Among the hidden demon cult, Wuxia wasn't the oldest old monster, nor was he the strongest demon cult. But he was the one with the greatest reputation and prestige. In the past, the 9 sky demons of the Sky Mountain had joined forces and formed an alliance to return to the Kunlun Devil cult. That was the last grand occasion of the demon cult. Although they died prematurely, it was still seen as the last glory of the demon cult. Although Wuxia and the other 4's actions had failed, they had also shown the entire Jianghu the power and unity of the demon cult. Some of the righteous Dao sects had also restrained themselves. Therefore, although Wuxia was old, he carried the favor of the entire demon cult, as well as the powerful prestige and rallying power of that era. Such an existence was rare in the pugilistic world. For Chu Xiu to be able to obtain Wuxia's favor, it could be said that as long as Wuxia asked, even a little bit of his favor would be enough for Chu Xiu to live off for the rest of his life. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "This Senior Wei is really an ancestor of the demon cult. His bearing is indeed not something that ordinary warriors can compare to. He is more like an expert than the elders of some famous righteous Dao sections." Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu with a smile that was not a smile and said, "Do you think that Senior Wei is very strong but he is kind and easy to talk to?" Without waiting for Chu Xiu to answer, Mr. Lu laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "Senior Wei is not easy to talk to. In his early years he was very irritable and impulsive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have formed the 9 sky demons with the other 4 people when his talent was amazing and his future was limitless to fight against the righteous Dao. Moreover, the demon cult has never had the habit of guiding the younger generation. Demon cult warriors, the competition is cruel and infighting is very normal. However, following the destruction of the 5 great sky devils of the 9th heaven mountain, Senior Wei has also changed his mind. This is especially true since our hidden devil faction is already small in numbers. If we continue to act like we did in the past, it is likely that we will be destroyed sooner or later. Therefore you should be glad that you met me and the Holy Maiden. We are all from the hidden devil lineage, so we don't mind helping you to the best of our ability. But if you met those guys from the moon-worshipping cult or the evil extreme sect, you would most likely be killed by them and then robbed of your inherited cultivation method." Chapter 380. This time the Demonic Alliance meeting was not a happy one. Both sides parted on bad terms. However, at least the people of the demonic path were certain of one thing. At this moment, both sides had put aside their prejudices and worked together to take back the demonic creation flag. After the Demonic Alliance meeting ended, Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu, who was disguised as the righteous warrior Su Songtao, back to the Sword Separation Pavilion to wait for the Sword Sect meeting to begin. A month later, the World Sword Sect meeting on Floating Jade Mountain officially began. Chu Xiu also followed the crowd up the mountain. Floating Jade Mountain covered a large area. This place was originally a jade mine, so it was called Floating Jade Mountain. However, after the mine on the mountain was completely excavated, it was abandoned. This time, the World Sword Sect meeting was held here because it was spacious and could accommodate more warriors. That was why they chose Floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu followed the crowd to the top of Floating Jade Mountain. This place had already been built with countless pavilions by the people of the 5 major sword sections. There was also a huge training ground in the middle for the upcoming competition. As the representative of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu also had a certain status. That was why Chu Xiu's position was still relatively close to the front. As for Mr. Lu, who was disguised as Su Songtao, although he was a righteous warrior on the surface, he was only a loose cultivator. That was why he was arranged to be at the back. However, Mr. Lu gestured to Chu Xiu to act according to the circumstances. Floating Jade Mountain was bustling with noise and excitement. Sword cultivators and unaffiliated cultivators who had heard the news were quarreling and discussing. Some of them looked excited as if they had caught a chance to attend a centennial event. However, they did not know that the seemingly lively floating jade mountain would soon turn into a bloodbath. What's more, they didn't know that the person they were chatting with right now was actually a Devil's Path villain. At this moment, on a high platform to the north of floating Jade Mountain, 5 sword-wielding warriors looked down at the crowd below. There were both men and women, and their auras were frighteningly restrained. These 5 people were the leaders of the 5 great sword sects of the present era: the Forgetting Sword Hut, the Storm Sword Tomb, the Sword King City, the Hidden Sword Villa, and the Yu Palace. They were either sect masters or martial arts masters with real power in their sections. The sect master of the Yu Palace was a charming young woman dressed in palace attire. Although she wasn't young anymore, she still retained her charm. Looking at the warriors below, the Yu Palace's sect master said solemnly, "Will the demonic Tao really come?" Beside her, a white-robed sword-wielding martial artist with a white scarf wrapped around his head and face said, "It doesn't matter if they come or not. If the people of the demonic Tao come, we will be singing a one-man show. If the demonic Tao doesn't come, we will sing a one-man show. In any case, the result will be the same." Another middle-aged man with a square face, wearing a brocade robe, but carrying 7 swords on his back, sneered, "Your Sword King City is still very stubborn about the position of the head of the 5 great sword sects. Sword King City is far away in the western region. Even if the position of head of the 5 great sword sects falls to you, apart from reputation, what benefits does it bring you?" The white-robed martial artist narrowed his eyes. "My Sword King City wants reputation, unlike your Hidden Sword Villa. You want to have a reputation but you don't have the chance." The people of the Hidden Sword Villa revealed a trace of anger in their eyes. Just as they were about to say something, a youth beside them said lightly, "Before the outsiders come, are you going to quarrel or fight first? Save your energy. Who knows, there might already be countless demonic Tao people among the warriors below. If you want to make a move, don't be in a hurry." The young man who spoke looked less than 30 years old. If one ignored the vicissitudes in his eyes, he was no different from the younger generation of warriors below. The strangest thing about him was his attire. The young man looked masculine and handsome, but there was a golden tattoo of a broken sword between his eyebrows. At first glance it looked like a third eye. He wore a loose white robe and was barefooted. A sword hung crookedly from his waist. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that it was actually a broken sword. That's right. The position of the head of the 5 great sword sects has been empty for so many years. It's time to decide who's superior and who's inferior. However, we can't kill each other here. If you want to fight, you'll have plenty of opportunities later. Moreover, these demonic Tao people have been faintly showing signs of recovery recently. Their movements are getting bigger and bigger. It's time to find an opportunity to suppress them." The last person to speak was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He wore an ordinary green robe. There was nothing special about him from head to toe. He could only be described as ordinary. He was definitely the kind of person that would not stand out in a crowd. If it were not for the long sword in his hand that had an old-fashioned mahogany scabbard, no one would even think that he was a man of the pugilistic world. However, this person seemed to have a very high status in the 5 sword sects. As soon as he spoke, the warriors of Sword King City and Hidden Sword Villa, who could not stand the sight of him, quietened down. Only the barefooted young man said lightly, "Your sitting Forgetting Sword Hut is next to the moon-worshipping cult. Do you feel the pressure?" The middle-aged man nodded. "That's the #1 sect of the demonic Tao, the moon-worshipping cult. Of course there's pressure. More than 20 years ago, the moon-worshipping cult's leader, Yi Xiaonan, fought with the Great Light Temple because of a poisonous insect. None of the 6 martial academies' first seats could withstand more than 3 moves from him. If it were not for the Wang Yin Zhen Hall's first seat, Su Yun, and the abbot, Su Ci, who was not yet the abbot at that time, the Great Light Temple would have suffered. Now Yi Xiaonan has not fought for more than 20 years. It is said that his Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra has reached great success, and his demonic power is close to that of the Kunlun devil cult of the past. To be neighbors with such a person, only a dead person would feel no pressure. Back then we were wrong. Even if the moon-worshipping cult was not related to the Kunlun devil cult, we should have eradicated them. The same goes for the other demonic Tao sections. But in the end, not long after, the demonic Tao has begun to recover. That barefooted young man stared at the skies and spoke, "Back then when we fought against the Kunlun demon sect, our Windcloud Sword Tomb also has a record of it. Even though Dugu Weiwa is no longer around, the Kunlun demon sect is still as strong as ever, so strong that it surpasses everyone's imagination. In that battle our righteous sects gave it our all. The eminent monks of the Buddhist sects died, the Taoist masters of the Taoist sects also died. That generation sword emperor of our Wind Cloud sword tomb also had his sword and head broken by a devil lord of the Kunlun demon sect. After the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, it is not that the righteous Tao sects do not want to wipe out the rest of the demonic Tao in one fell swoop, but they do not have the strength. Such a powerful Kunlun devil cult will not appear again. The moon-worshipping cult is far from being qualified. I don't know if Yi Xiaonan will come this time. If he dares to come, I want to see whether his moon-worshipping cult's heaven-mending heart sutra can cover the sun and cover the moon, or my storm sword tomb's divine sword eradicating abyss is unparalleled in the world. The expression of the middle-aged man from the Forgotten Sword Hut finally changed slightly. Storm Sword Tomb invited eradicating abyss out? The youth grinned, revealing a neat row of white teeth. Ever since the battle of the Kunlun devil cult, eradicating abyss has not come out for hundreds of years. Now that the World Sword Sect Conference is a grand occasion for my sword lineage, it is time for eradicating abyss to come out and see the sun and blood. The other 4 people were shocked. Only the martial artists from the 5 major sword sects knew how terrifying that sword was. Besides the Storm Sword Tomb's foundation, no one could suppress that sword. It was called a divine sword, but it was an incomparably evil and murderous weapon. At this time, the martial artists below did not feel the aura of an impending storm. For them, as long as they could hear a martial arts grandmaster-level powerhouse speak, even if it was just a sentence, it would be enough for them to benefit immensely. The seats were arranged by the Forgotten Sword Hut, and they were arranged according to the approximate positions of West Chu, Eastern Qi, and Northern Yen. Chu Xiu was someone from the Guanzhong torture room, which was located between the 3 countries, so his seat was arranged between West Chu and Northern Yen, a bit further away from Eastern Qi. The martial artist from the Forgotten Sword Hut who arranged a seat for Chu Xiu seemed to be very intelligent. He knew that Chu Xiu had once slaughtered in Eastern Qi and was not well received by the martial artists of Eastern Qi, so he specially arranged for Chu Xiu to be placed between West Chu and Northern Yen. However, he did not expect that besides Eastern Qi, there were also many people from Northern Yen and West Chu who did not like Chu Xiu. Not long after Chu Xiu took his seat, people from other sects came over. When one of the people from the new sect saw Chu Xiu, his body stiffened and he paused. Someone behind him said in surprise, "Eldertson, why aren't you walking? Take a seat." Chu Xiu looked back and saw Teachertson of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect and a few other disciples of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect walking over. Their seats were next to Chu Xiu. Seeing that the person who had come was Teachertson, Chu Xiu grinned at Teachertson, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. It was very bright. "So it is Elder Cian. Last time, Eldertson ran very quickly. For the first time, I know that the Ba Mountain Sword Sect is not just skilled in sword techniques but also in lightness skills." Teachertson's face flushed red at Chu Xiu's words. He had been a scholar in the past. Last time in the Tower of Heaven he had lost face. Originally he had put aside the grievances between him and Chu Xiu. As long as he stood on Chu Xiu's side at that time, 1/3 of the things in the Tower of Heaven would be his. Unfortunately, Teachertson had made the wrong choice in the end. He chose to stand on Xiahou Wujiang's side. In the end he only obtained half of the fierce beast's heart and fled dejectedly. Thinking of this matter, he still felt pain in his heart. The pain of regret was even more painful than when he learned that his disciple Zhang Baitao had been killed by Chu Xiu. At this time a Unity of Heaven realm martial artist behind Teachertson said in surprise, "Eldertson, who is this friend? Do you know him?" This time the sect leader of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect did not come. The Ba Mountain Sword Sect was not strong and only had one martial arts grandmaster. Naturally, they could not ignore the sect just to come to the World Sword Sect Conference to watch the show. Therefore, only Teachertson and another Unity of Heaven realm martial artist came with a few young disciples to watch the show. Chu Xiu smiled at the martial artist and said, "Well said. I am Chu Xiu, an old friend of Elder Cian." Chapter 381. Of course, the people of Ba Mountain Sword Sect had heard of Chu Xiu's name. This name had been spread by Teacher Cian. After all, one of his personal disciples had died. No matter what, he had to report it to the sect. But a sect at the level of Ba Mountain Sword Sect would not mobilize their power for an ordinary disciple and go on a grand scale to avenge him. They had many disciples. If they went to great lengths to avenge him, they would not just lose one disciple but many more. so if Chu Xiu was a nobody it would not matter. But in the end, Chu Xiu was a torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room. The sect leader of Ba Mountain Sword Sect could only say his condolences to Teacher Xian. But looking at Teacher Tsin's expression, he was actually not that sad. But looking at Chu Xiu in front of him, the Ba Mountain Sword Sect warrior could not help but want to explode. Previously he could not see Chu Xiu, but now that Chu Xiu was here, if he continued to pretend to be deaf and mute, he would seem too cowardly. But before he could say anything, he was pulled back by Teacher Xian. Teacher Tsin immediately whispered a few words into his ear and pulled him to the side to sit down. In reality, while Teacher Tsin's strength was not great, and he was somewhat hypocritical, in reality, Teacher Tsin knew his limits. He knew his own strength, and he also knew the strength of Ba Mountain Sword Sect. If he fought against Chu Xiu, he would only be at a disadvantage. So while the one who died was his disciple, Teacher Tsin did not want to continue fighting with Chu Xiu. This was not cowardice, this was reason. He, Teacher Tsin, had roamed the martial world for so many years. He had relied on this reason to become an elder of Ba Mountain Sword Sect. Otherwise he would have been killed many times over. And now, seeing that Teacher Tsin knew his limits, Chu Xiu could not be bothered to continue targeting him. He was a reasonable person sometimes. It was Teacher Tsin who had a grudge against him, not him who had a grudge against Teacher Xian. Chu Xiu could naturally tell that Teacher Tsin was not playing a game of enduring humiliation. Instead, he really did not want to avenge his past grudges. At this time, a voice came from behind Chu Xiu. "Brother Chu, we meet again." Chu Xiu turned around and saw that it was Xie Xiaolu from the World Alliance. Besides Xie Xiaolu were a few Unity of the World Realm martial artists. Clearly they were also experts from the World Alliance. Xie Xiaolu's strength was right there, he was just a spectator, not a representative like Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I knew you would come. The 5 great sword sects will hold the World Sword Sect Conference in West Chu, so your World Alliance will definitely be invited." "That's right, your World Alliance's alliance leader Qin didn't come." Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The World Alliance has so many things to deal with, how could my master have the time to come here and play with them? And according to my master's personality, if those so-called Sword Path Grandmasters say something wrong during their sermon, my master will probably go up and argue with them. In the end, it's even possible for them to fight." Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. He seemed to have heard some rumors that the World Alliance's alliance leader Qin Qingdi was indeed not someone who was easy to talk to. At this time, Xie Xiaolu walked closer to Chu Xiu and said in a low voice, "Brother Chu, if the World Sword Sect Conference ends early or if something happens, you should immediately leave Floating Jade Mountain. Don't stay here any longer." Chu Xiu revealed a strange look in his eyes and said, "What news did you hear?" Xie Xiaolu nodded and said, "My master said that this World Sword Sect Conference doesn't seem to be peaceful. The 5 great sword sects' actions are provoking the demonic path. I don't think the demonic path will let this matter go. In any case, my master said that if it were him, he would definitely make a move and directly smash this Floating Jade Mountain to smithereens. So, our World Alliance is only here to watch the show. After watching the show, we'll leave immediately. It's best if we don't get involved in the matter between the demonic path and the 5 great sword sects." Chu Xiu nodded, but he was thinking in his heart, as expected, the other sects are not stupid. These people also know what the 5 great sword sects are preparing to do. However, this is an internal matter of the 5 great sword sects. Moreover, the demonic path has been showing signs of revival these years, so they have to suppress it. So no one stopped it. Chu Xiu asked, "Since Alliance leader Qin already knows about this, does he still dare to let you go up Floating Jade Mountain?" Xie Xiaolu said matter-of-factly, "Why not? This is a fight between the demonic path and the 5 great sword sects. The others have no intention of interfering. Our World Alliance is just watching from the side and has no intention of making a move." Chu Xiu was silent. It seemed that Qin Qingdi had guessed wrongly. This time the demonic path would indeed act, but if they did, it would be a major move. He had thought that this time Floating Jade Mountain was only a matter between the sword path and the demonic path. He did not know that in the end, this matter had evolved into a war between the righteous path and the demonic path. Of course, even this had nothing to do with the World Alliance. Because the World Alliance did not belong to the righteous path, they also did not belong to the demonic path. So when the two sides fought, no one would provoke a neutral faction like the World Alliance. At this time, Xie Xiaolu also looked at Teacher Tsin and pursed his lips. "Isn't this the elder of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect who escaped last time? What, have you settled your grudge with him?" In the time that Xie Xiaolu had known Chu Xiu, he had more or less understood Chu Xiu's personality. He was tough, strong, and had a hint of madness. Right now, there were only two kinds of people who had a grudge with Chushio. One was the living that could not be killed, and the other was the dead that were already dead. Right now, the people of the Ba Mountain Sword sect were living peacefully with Chushio. This made Xie Xiaolu feel that it was incredible. Chushio corrected. It is they who have a grudge with me, not the other way around. Hearing Chushio say this, Xie Xiaolu immediately understood what Chushio meant. So the people of the Ba Mountain Sword sect were afraid. But Xie Xiaolu felt that this was normal. He was in West Chu and naturally knew what the people of the Ba Mountain Sword sect were like. Among the top sects in the world, factions like the Ba Mountain Sword sect were at the bottom because they only had one martial arts grandmaster. Not only that, but this martial Dao grandmaster's strength was not too strong, and there were no outstanding figures in the next generation, which was very embarrassing. Once there was a gap in one generation of the Ba Mountain Sword sect, the sect would immediately fall apart, and then it would be completely removed from the Jianghu songs. So usually, sects like the Ba Mountain Sword sect would act like cowards, and act like top sects with some small sections. But in front of some troublesome opponents, they did not mind surrendering. At this time there was a hubbub in the crowd behind them. Chushio raised an eyebrow and said, "Important people have come up the mountain?" Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The important people have come to Floating Jade Mountain ahead of time. The ones coming up at this time are only the younger generation." As he spoke, Chushio and Xie Xiaolu instinctively looked in the direction of the newcomer. Chushio frowned. Xie Xiaolu rarely smiled and said, "Ba Mountain Sword sect's grievance with you has been resolved, but this person is not. I heard that in the Northern Yen, if someone mentions your name, this person will not be able to control his demeanor." The person who had just come up the mountain was a handsome young man with an extraordinary presence. He wore a gilded robe and was surrounded by countless warriors. This person could be considered an old acquaintance of Chushio, but Chushio had not seen him for a long time. This person was Nie Donglu of the Morgue village. Just as Xie Xiaolu had said, the grievance between Chushio and Nie Donglu had not been resolved. Previously, when Chushio stole the treasure from Nie Donglu had sent people to kill him. At that time, Chushio had no one to rely on and was in a sorry state. Chushio would not forget this grievance. Chushio stared at Nie Donglu for a while and suddenly said, "Nie Donglu has entered the Five Qis returning to the origin realm?" Chushio vaguely remembered that the last time Nie Donglu's news came, he was only a physical invulnerability expert. Then he went into seclusion because of something, and his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard fell out of the top 10. Now he has actually entered the Five Qis returning to the origin realm. Is it because Nie Donglu's talent is unparalleled, or did he encounter some opportunity? Xie Xiaolu looked at Chushio in surprise and said, "You don't know? What should I know?" Chushio asked back. Xie Xiaolu was a little speechless. "You are a Northern Yen martial artist. Don't you care about what happened in the Northern Yen recently?" Chushio said calmly, "People in Jianghu are like duckweed. How can I care about my background? I can't even take care of the things in front of me. How can I have the leisure to care about the Northern Yen?" Xie Xiaolu shook his head again. Mo Tianlin always said that he was indifferent. It must be natural for him to shave his head and join a Buddhist sect to meditate. But now it seemed that Chushio was even more indifferent than him. Looking at Nie Donglu in the crowd, Xie Xiaolu said in a low voice, "Nie Donglu obtained an opportunity. But this opportunity is not an item but a person. Some time ago, it was said that Nie Donglu was defeated by a woman. This matter was probably too much for someone as proud as Nie Donglu, so he put down everything and went into seclusion. Later, because there were some things to take care of in the morgue, but Nie Renlong wasn't there, Nie Donglu had to go. But unexpectedly he met the great Northern Yen Jianghu Stone General Han Baxian and was taken in as a personal disciple. A martial arts grandmaster for a father and a martial arts grandmaster for a master. Is this opportunity big enough?" Chushio looked at Nie Donglu in surprise. This guy's luck was really good. He just went out for a trip and he was able to have a martial arts grandmaster as his master. And Han Baxian wasn't just any martial arts grandmaster. Although he didn't belong to any sect, he was very famous in the Northern Yen. He was one of the strongest among the martial arts grandmasters. Chapter 382. Stone General Han Baxian's nickname was quite interesting. He had indeed been a general in his early years and had even become the general of the Stone Forest Army that guarded the western part of Yen. He was considered a core force in the Northern Yen military. At that time, Han Baxian was even valued by a big shot in the Northern Yan military. He was prepared to take him under the command of the Fifth Army and make him a deputy general. However, Han Baxian was obsessed with martial arts and despised being in the military for interfering with his training. Therefore, he resigned from his position as the general of the Stone Forest Army and focused on training. He went to the cold lands of the far north or the far west desert to polish his martial arts. He was more famous there than in the military. Rumor had it that Han Baxian's personality was domineering and aggressive, and he was even a bit of a martial arts fanatic. Logically speaking, his personality should not be compatible with Nie Donglu, but now Han Baxian had taken Nie Donglu as his disciple, which made Chu Xiu feel a bit strange. Nie Donglu was from the Northern Yan, so he was naturally assigned to the Northern Yan side. It just so happened that Chu Xiu's position was not close to Eastern Qi. To his left was Western Chu, and to his right was Northern Yan. When Nie Donglu looked over, he naturally saw Chu Xiu standing there. Nie Dongliu's expression changed slightly, but he still revealed a smile. Nie Dongliu's attitude towards Chu Xiu was very strange. In the beginning he did not see Chu Xiu as an opponent. To him, Chu Xiu was only a small obstacle. If he could kill him, he would. If he could not, he would not waste too much effort to hunt down Chu Xiu. Therefore, after obtaining the treasure at Liang Mountain, Nie Donglu did not even use the power of the morgue to hunt down Chu Xiu. He only gathered some sects that wanted to curry favor with the morgue. When Chu Xiu left the Northern Yan, he quickly became famous in the Jianghu like a dragon returning to the sea. He even jumped to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. It would be a lie to say that Nie Donglu wasn't jealous of the situation. Nie Donglu naturally felt uncomfortable as he looked at the loose cultivator he could crush to death in the past, who had now become a torture officer in the Guanzhong torture room and a young elite ranked above him on the Longhu list. Even so, Nie Donglu would only feel uncomfortable. He wasn't a weak-minded person like Sword King City's Lin Kaiyun, who would be affected by such a small matter. What really affected Nie Donglu was not himself, but the rumors outside. People in Jianghu always liked to spread gossip. Some people just couldn't bear to see others doing well. The more unlucky someone was, the happier they would be. Even though Nie Donglu had countless friends outside and appeared to be very humble, polite and loyal, there were still some people who just wanted to see him suffer. So, as soon as the news about Chu Xiu reached the Northern Yan side, there would immediately be people in the Northern Yan side saying that Nie Donglu had let Chu Xiu go, and now he was being stepped on. Anyway, it was as ugly as it could be. These rumors had already affected Nie Dongliu's reputation to a certain extent. He couldn't ignore it. There was only one way to solve it. It wasn't to kill those people who were gossiping, but to defeat Chu Xiu. There were too many of the former. Not to mention the current power of the Morgue Village. Even if the Morgue Village had the power of the Great Light Temple, they still wouldn't be able to kill all of them. So, the most reliable way was the latter. As long as Chu Xiu was defeated or killed by him, everything would be solved. It was simple and direct. In the past, Nie Donglu liked to use schemes and look down on those simple-minded boorish people. In his opinion, such boorish people would be killed by others sooner or later, no matter how strong they were. But ever since he was defeated by that woman, Nie Donglu suffered some setbacks. In the face of absolute power, his schemes couldn't be put to good use. Nie Donglu said he was the young master of the Morgue Village and someone said, "You lost to a woman." Nie Donglu said he was a hero on the Longhu list and someone said, "You lost to a woman." Nie Donglu said he had already started training in isolation, and someone said, "You lost to a woman." There was no way to clear his name of being defeated in public, and there was no way to justify it. It was simple and direct. It also made Nie Donglu realize that sometimes, absolute power was more important than schemes. After that, Nie Donglu got to know his current master Han Baxian. This famous martial arts master of the Northern Yan world was extremely wild in both strength and personality. He also taught Nie Donglu many things other than martial arts. When one's strength reached a certain level, it was enough to destroy any conspiracy. In the past, Nie Donglu had put the cart before the horse. Now, Nie Donglu finally realized that it was right to rely on schemes and brains, but the most important thing a warrior should rely on was their fists. Thinking of this, Nie Donglu walked over to Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "Brother Chu, long time no see." Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu and Nie Donglu. These two were heroes on the Longhu list, and everyone had heard of the feud between them. However, in the past few years Chu Xiu had been in Guanzhong, and Nie Donglu had also been training in isolation in the Northern Yan. The two had not had many opportunities to interact. Now that they were in time for the World Sword Sect Conference, Were they preparing to warm up before the conference? Chu Xiu also looked at Nie Donglu and said calmly, "Yes, long time no see. Feels like things have remained the same but people have changed. Brother Nie, you have changed a lot." At the moment, Chu Xiu's attitude was calm, and there was no sign that he had a great feud with Nie Donglu. The two of them seemed like old friends catching up. Nie Donglu looked straight at Chu Xiu and took a step forward. The aura around him became extremely serious. In the past, Chu Xiu had fought with Nie Donglu. Compared to the Nie Donglu of the past, the aura around him was completely different. It could be imagined how much he had changed in this period of time. People change, don't they? But what has already happened will not change. Brother Chu, it is time to end the feud between us. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "I was the one who was chased miserably back then. It seems like I should be the one saying this. The World Sword Sect Conference is a good place. With so many people watching, it is enough for us to settle the past feud. Of course, looking at you, you probably can't wait and want to make a move now? Alright, I will accompany you to the end." An extremely oppressive aura was released from Chu Xiu's body. It was not weaker than Nie Donglio's at all. In fact, the strong killing intent was even stronger than Nie Donglio's. Since leaving the northern Yen, Chu Xiu had always been growing through killing. On the other hand, Nie Donglu had been training in seclusion and training with his master. Although his cultivation level had improved quickly, the number of people he had killed was not as much as Chu Xiu. Just when both sides thought that the two of them would definitely fight, Nie Donglio's aura suddenly dissipated. Like a spring breeze and rain, it dissipated the killing intent on Chu Xiu's body. Nie Donglu laughed and said, "Brother Chu, I was just joking. Did you take it seriously? I don't care about grudges anymore. If there's a chance later we can have a spar. However, the World Sword Sect Convention is about to begin. If we fight here, aren't we not giving face to the 5 major sword sects?" Chu Xiu suddenly sneered and said, "I realized that I was wrong before. You young Master Nie haven't changed at all." After saying that, Chu Xiu sat down and ignored Nie Donglu. Nie Donglu did the same and went to his seat. The two of them did not say another word. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that Nie Donglu had become more straightforward and wanted to solve the problem with his fists. He did not expect him to still be the same. In the past, the one who had been hunted was Chu Xiu. In the end, Nie Donglu said that he didn't care about grudges. Didn't that make him seem petty? Moreover, the one who had released his aura to provoke was Nie Donglu. In the end, he said that he was joking and Chu Xiu became the petty one. This person's mouth was full of lies, and his schemes and calculations were already embedded in his bones. Every word he said had to be at least a little bit of an advantage. However, Chu Xiu did not care. He did not have a good reputation in Eastern Qi or the entire Jianghu. Chu Xiu did not need a good reputation. Now that he was called petty and calculative, it would not hurt Chu Xiu. As for why Nie Donglu did not make a move in the end, the reason was very simple. It was because he was not confident. If Nie Donglu was confident, he would not care about the reputation of the 5 great sword sects. He would have defeated Chu Xiu on the spot or even killed him to regain his reputation. After all, he was the young master of Honor Village. He was already dead. The 5 major sword sects would not let him die with them. Nie Donglu did not make a move because he was not confident. Based on the aura that Chu Xiu had released, he was not confident that he could beat Chu Xiu on the spot. So he had to wait. He had to wait until he understood Chu Xiu, or until Chu Xiu was exhausted and injured. Han Baxin had taught him to use his fists to solve problems, but Nie Donglu did not forget his brain and calculations. Wouldn't it be safer to crush the opponent under the premise that he had absolute confidence in winning? Xie Xiaolu sat next to Chu Xiu and asked in a low voice, "Are you going to make a move later?" A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he said, "Even if I don't make a move, the young manor lord won't let this go. I want revenge and he wants his reputation. We will have to fight." Xie Xiaolu nodded. "Be careful. I have not met Nie Donglu, but my master has evaluated his father, Nie Rinlong. Nie Rinlong is not weak, but he is not too strong either. But what makes Nie Rinlong truly frightens people is his methods. Most of the 6 gangs were born in the wilderness. The ones who can walk to the end and have the greatest potential, other than West Chu's World Alliance, are the Northern Yen Memorial Village." Chapter 383. It wasn't hard to deal with a reckless warrior who only knew how to fight and kill, and it wasn't hard to deal with a guy who only knew how to plot in the dark. What was really difficult was to combine the two, and Ye Donglu was like that now. Chu Xiu knew that the ghost village was not to be trifled with. However, the enmity had already been formed, so it had to be resolved sooner or later. At the foot of floating Jade Mountain, almost everyone who was supposed to be there had arrived. The disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut had already come out to maintain order, ready to wait for the World Sword Sect Conference to officially begin. But at that moment, an even louder clamor came from the foot of the mountain. Clearly, the person who had come was even more famous than Ye Donglu. Chu Xiu turned around and saw that the people who had come were people from the Great Light Temple, Subodhi Monastery, and some other top sections. These major sects were all invited by the 5 sword sects to attend the ceremony. Top sects of the Jianghu of this level never lacked martial Dao grandmasters. For example, in the Great Light Temple's 3 great Zen halls and the 6 great martial academies, every first seat had the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster. The people from the Great Light Temple were the head of the Vajra department, Su Yan, and the head of the Kongji Zen Hall, Su Du. The martial institution and the Zen Hall had each sent one person, which was enough to give face to the 5 major sword sections. The first seat of the Kongji Zen Hall, Su Du, was a middle-aged monk who looked to be in his 40s. Compared to the other monks of the Temple of Great Light, Su Du appeared to be a little sloppy. He swayed as he walked, and without his monk robes, he looked like an old ruffian on the streets. He did not look like an accomplished monk at all. However, among these people, his position was the highest. The other warriors of the Great Light Temple could only stand behind him. This made the few disciples of the Great Light Temple behind him cover their faces with their hands, looking embarrassed. They really could not understand why the temple would send Uncle Master Shudu here. This was simply affecting the image of the Great Light Temple. Su Yan tugged at Sudu's arm and whispered, "Senior brother Sudu, mind your image." Sudu glanced at him and said indifferently, "Image? I'm not senior brother Abbot. What image do I need? Back then, my master gave me the Dharma name of Sudu. I have not wasted my time, and I have not let him down. What's more, the Buddha has said, everything is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble and a shadow, like dew or like lightning. I have Buddha in my heart, so who can say that I have tarnished the reputation of the Buddhist sect? A Buddha with a gold-plated body and a dignified appearance is a Buddha, but a clay and wooden body that protects the poor people is not a Buddha." Junior brother, you are too obsessed with appearances. It is not a good thing to be too attached to these appearances. Buddha is in your heart, not on your kasaya. Su Yan was rendered speechless by Sudu's words and he rolled his eyes. The 6 great martial institutions cultivated martial arts, while the 3 great Zen halls cultivated both Zen and martial arts. In terms of understanding of various Buddhist scriptures, they were far inferior to the 3 great Zen halls in terms of eloquence. Although Su Yan knew that these were all excuses and sophistry, when he heard it, it seemed to make sense. He looked at the Buddhist disciples behind him and saw that they were all admiring Uncle Master Su Du, who was indeed an eminent monk of his generation. Seeing this, Su Yan was instantly helpless. He was deeply worried about the future of the Great Light Temple. At this moment, Huizhen, who was behind him, suddenly stiffened and paused. "Huizhen, what's wrong?" Su Yan asked. Because of Ming Chen's death, Huizhen, who was not young to begin with, had recently aged even more. Therefore, Su Yan had brought Huizhen to the World Sword Sect Conference as a way to relax. Following Huizhen's gaze, Su Yan also saw Chu Xiu. This made him frown. He did not expect Chu Xiu to be here. After all, the World Sword Sect Conference was a grand event of the entire pugilistic world. It was a rather serious one. Therefore, the people who could represent their respective factions were definitely the mainstays of their respective factions. Although Chu Xiu's battle prowess was comparable to the unity of heaven and man realm, in reality he was still at the 5 Chi's origin realm. His experience in the Guanzhong torture room was far from that of the other disciplinary officers and the head of the arrest department. Therefore, Su Yan would never have expected Chu Xiu to be here. Su Yan looked at Huizhen worriedly. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Huizhen turn his head indifferently and wave his hand. "Uncle Master, I'm fine. Let's go." Huizhen knew that it was difficult for Su Yan. He did not want to put this Uncle Master, who had always treated him well, in a difficult position. However, some monks from the Vajra Yard were furious. "Chu Xiu killed our senior brother Ming Chen and Uncle Master Huizhen. Are we just going to let this matter go?" The monks from the Vajra Yard cultivated together. These monks were not Huizhen's disciples, but they were similarly furious over Ming Chen's death. Some of the grudges in the Jianghu were actually unreasonable. Even the Great Light Temple could not stand on the side of reason. In any case, in the eyes of these warriors, Ming Chen was their senior brother. Although he was hot-tempered and easily angered to outsiders, he took good care of them internally. He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Now that Ming Chen had been killed, they did not care whether Ming Chen had sought trouble with Chu Xiu first or not. As long as they knew that Ming Chen had died at the hands of Chu Xiu, that was enough. Hui Zhen stopped these people and waved his hand. He said in a low voice, "Don't be rash. I also want to take revenge for Ming Chen, but revenge depends on the time and place. What you are doing now is ruining the reputation of the Great Light Temple. You must consider the bigger picture." Among the warriors present, Hui Zhen, who had lost his disciple, was the calmest. Although the others were somewhat indignant, as Ming Chen's master, Hui Zhen, had already said that this matter would be over for now. What else could they say? They could only suppress the anger in their hearts and pretend that they did not see Chu Xiu. When Xu Du, who was walking at the front, saw this scene, he could not help but shake his head. He said, "Revenge breeds revenge. When will there be an end to it? Grudges cannot be suppressed. The more you suppress it, the more it will rebound. At that time, it will probably cause even more unexpected consequences. If we want to completely end this grudge, we must completely kill the other party." Senior brother Shiyun made a mistake this time. For the sake of a favor, he did not let the Great Light Temple take action. However, this deepened the grudge. No one can say for sure how it will develop. Su Yan frowned and said, "Since you know, why didn't you tell senior brother Shiyun?" Shudu looked at Su Yan like he was looking at an idiot. Based on senior brother Shiyun's personality, once he has set his mind on something, even if the abbot speaks, it will not be easy for him to change his mind, much less something like this. "I don't want to deal with senior brother Shiyun, so if something like this happens again in the future and you want to speak, I'll remind you to do it yourself." Su Yan was instantly speechless. Actually, Su Yan did not even think about dealing with senior brother Shiyun. Otherwise, he would not have agreed to Shiyun's request so easily back then. Shiyun's position in the Great Light Temple was very special. Could be said that he was second only to the abbot. He was even an existence that could faintly rival the abbot Su Ci. Furthermore, Shiyun's personality was a little polarizing. On the outside, he was the Great Light Temple's Wangyan Zen Hall's first seat. He had a profound cultivation in the Buddhist Dharma, and he was an eminent monk with a peaceful personality. However, on the other hand, almost only the people of the Great Light Temple knew about him. He could be said to be paranoid and terrifying. Sometimes, even if the martial artists of the Great Light Temple had to deal with the abbot, they would not want to deal with Shiyun. After the people of the Great Light Temple took their seats, they looked forward. Not a single one of them looked at Chu Xiu, even though Chu Xiu was their Great Light Temple's enemy. This was also a habit formed by the precepts of the Great Light Temple. Every move was strictly executed. It was very strict. Xie Xiaolu saw the actions of the people from the Great Light Temple and said with slight surprise, "Did the Guanzhong torture room help you settle the matter of you killing Ming Chen?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Although the Guanzhong torture room does not have a long history, it still has some foundation. I only killed Ming Chen from the Jinggang department, not the most outstanding disciple of the Great Light Temple, Wisdom King Zhongxian. The Guanzhong torture room can still suppress it." "Oh right, did Wisdom King Zhongxian not come to the World Sword Sect conference this time?" Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "I heard that Wisdom King Zhongxian had already stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm a few years ago. You can't kill him even if you wanted to. This World Sword Sect conference is mainly prepared for sword cultivators. If Wisdom King Zhongxian comes, will he go? As a hero ranked in the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger list, if Zhongxian doesn't go, he will be ridiculed as a coward. But if he goes, he will have the intention of provoking the major sword sections. So this time, Zhongxian didn't come at all. Little Celestial Master Zhang Qingzhen also didn't come. The top 5 of the Dragon and Tiger list is only Chief Sword Fang Qishao. Oh right, you New Palace's Yan Fian is also here. The final winner of this World Sword Sect conference will most likely be Fang Qishao. As for the others, they will more or less get some benefits. But among the younger generation of martial artists, when it comes to sword cultivation, no one can beat Fang Qishao." Just as Xie Xiaolu was discussing Fang Qishao, the World Sword Sect conference was about to begin. Everyone had already taken their seats, but at this time, a youth walked out from Sword King City's side and walked straight towards Chu Xiu. The youth was dressed in white warrior clothes, but he didn't wear the Sword King City's white headscarf. His appearance couldn't be considered too handsome, but he gave people a very natural and comfortable feeling. A simple and unadorned sword with a black hilt was wrapped in sackcloth and hung loosely on his back. It didn't match the temperament of an ordinary martial artist from Sword King City. This young man seemed ordinary, and did not attract as much attention as Nie Donglu. However, when he moved, everyone present could not help but look at him, as if there was some mysterious attraction on this young man's body that attracted everyone's attention. Xie Xiaolu was surprised and said, "Chief Swords Fang Qi Xiao. You also have a grudge with Fang Qi Xiao?" Chu Xiu looked at the approaching Fang Qi Xiao and said with an unchanging expression, "I don't have a grudge with Fang Qi Xiao, but I don't have a good relationship with Sword King City." At this time, Fang Qi Xiao had already walked in front of Chu Xiu and grinned at Chu Xiu. He had a gentle temperament. "My name is Young Master Fang, not Young Master Fang. You should have heard of me." Chu Xiu also had an indifferent expression as he said, "Chu Xiu, the Xiu that says everything is over. Since you've come to find me, you should naturally know of me. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.